Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Common Sense for the 21st Century by Roger Hallam. The subtitle, Only Nonviolent Rebellion Can Now Stop Climate Breakdown and Social Collapse. This is from the foreword. I was there for the past 20 years. Climate activism. It didn't work. We protested in our hundreds of millions. It didn't work. We raised billions to reach people and politicians. It didn't work. We signed countless online petitions. They didn't work. We looked to the United Nations to resolve the crisis. It didn't work. We trusted progressive politicians and their reforms. That didn't work. Al Gore had a big concert and a PR campaign. It didn't work. Countless NGOs, non-governmental organizations, did their best, and it didn't work. I worked with green NGO campaigns, champagne environmentalists, and lying politicians. I was wasting my time. I had a clue back in 2007 that there might be a fundamental flaw with the reformist approach. The problem with the political influence of the industrial billionaires like the Koch brothers and other fossil fuel bosses. It was another warm night in Los Angeles. I was invited to an exclusive event. A Tesla Roadster prototype was going to be shown to press and guests. We took turns riding around the block. I watched in amazement as the Tesla was at the end of the street in the blink of an eye, with barely a sound. I felt like a caveman seeing a television. Incredible. While I was working on a campaign in 2007, I had an idea for how to save the world with a massive music event and a huge fundraising effort led by celebrities to fund the biggest PR campaign to save the environment. It would be a huge global event, just like Live Aid. I sought out a prominent journalist at the Tesla event to tell about my scheme and bask in the glory of his praise. The journalist was Vijay Vithswaram from The Economist, now a life member of this Council on Foreign Relations. After listening carefully to my concept, he smiled and laughed. I was stunned. Laughter? How could I be so wrong? Vijay wasn't being cruel or unkind. He thought I was naive. He said, "The fossil fuel industry has enough money to outspend any public relations campaign you might try by 100 times. He carried on talking, but I had stopped listening. I had my answer. He was right. Crestfallen, I sheepishly nodded and walked away. Over the next 12 years, I watched as fossil fuel companies used their vast financial capital to buy political parties, trick NGOs into fruitless schemes like the U.S. Cap and Trade Initiative, sow doubt about climate science in the public discourse, and slow policy reform to a snail's pace. Their strategy worked. As climate skepticism continued to spread, climate change mitigation dropped down voters' priorities. With Trump and Putin in power, it was over. I quit climate campaigning. Then I heard about Extinction Rebellion closing 5 bridges in London. Then they closed central London in April 2019. This was something different. I met Roger Hallam and he explained his ideas for a radical plan to create real change. This included, first, tell the truth. Climate skepticism was pushed by the mainstream media, which spread doubt on climate science like a plague, leaving inaction in its wake. The scale of the crisis is being played down, and we must get the truth out. Second, nonviolent civil disobedience. We need to get arrested, tens of thousands of us, more. No more protests, no more petitions. Instead, nonviolent civil disobedience, lots of it, and on a large scale. Close down cities until the politicians take action, or until the people do. Third, universalism. In other words, the ecological and climate crisis should not be owned by any political ideology, culture, age, or gender. As Roger Hallam says, we all have a stake in the future. We should all be allowed to engage in action. I was convinced. We need a new approach to save ourselves and the planet. We need to spark a worldwide rebellion. We need some common sense for the 21st century. That foreword was written by, quote, anonymous climate activist. So this now is the introduction to the book. It is time to grow up and see the world as it is. There are some things which are undeniably real. There are some things we cannot change, and one of those is the law of physics. Ice melts when the temperature increases. Crops die in a drought. Trees burn in forest fires. Because these things are real, we can also be certain about what the future holds. We are now heading into a period of extreme ecological collapse. Whether or not this leads to the extinction of the human species largely depends on whether revolutionary changes happen within our societies within the next decade. This is not a matter of ideology, but of simple math and physics. The United Nations has estimated that we need to reduce carbon emissions by half within a decade to have a 50% chance of avoiding a global catastrophe. Of course, this is likely to be an underestimate as recent science shows permafrost melting 90 years earlier than forecasted and Himalayan glaciers melting twice as fast as expected. The book, Common Sense for the 21st Century, by Roger Hallam, the co-founder of the Extinction Rebellion. The subtitle, Only Nonviolent Rebellion Can Now Stop Climate Breakdown and Social Collapse.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Well, it is Pearl Harbor Day. This is the day that Franklin Roosevelt was referring to 80 years and one day ago when he had this to say.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
And at this moment, Joe Biden is talking to President Putin of Russia, President Biden, about trying to stop another possible world war. Pretty amazing stuff. We've got a lot to talk about today, and some of it actually in our second hour. I want to get into this whole issue that Pearl Harbor Day raises, I think, which is the national service for everyone. It looks like Congress was prepared to. Well, it doesn't look like Congress was prepared to include women in the draft, and because of the objections of Josh Hawley and a few other manly men in the Republican Party, they're stripping women out of the draft. I'm raising the question: should we have a draft? I mean, should we have a national service program for men and women in the United States? I believe it would be a good thing. We'll get into that in the second hour. Also, Troy Miller is going to drop by real quickly and tell us about how West Virginia progressives are calling on Joe Manchin. They've got a billboard campaign to lower drug prices. And in our third hour, I want to get into this whole question of why right-wing women are embracing Madison Cawthorn's idea that they should raise their sons to be monsters. Also, in the first hour here, I want to get into this question of should we ignore or should we engage rural voters in the United States? The rural parts of this country are just overwhelmingly Republican. What do we do about it? But to open the program, my rant today over at Hartmann Report is titled, How Many More Children Must Die for the Second Amendment? And it's a very straightforward question. We have more children dying from gun violence in the United States than we have cops dying from gun violence or soldiers dying on the battlefield combined. I mean, imagine your 5-year-old child singing in school to the tune of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Lockdown, lockdown, lock the door, shut the lights, say no more. Go behind the desk and hide, wait until it's safe inside. No, seriously. 5-year-olds in school. And then being stalked by another child, this one, for example, with a Sig Sauer 9mm semi-automatic weapon that was designed for warfare. Imagine getting the call from the hospital or the police telling you that your child or grandchild is dead by gunfire, that you'll never see him or her again, ever. Now, every day when police go to work, as we're told thousands of times a year by cop shows on TV, their family knows that they, never knows if they're going to come home alive. I mean, for this reason, among others, we gave, the Supreme Court gave police the so-called qualified immunity. So if they kill somebody in the line of duty, it's really hard to prosecute them. We celebrate our soldiers, our Marines, our airmen, and our sailors for largely the same reason. They put their lives on the line to protect us. Cops run toward gunfire, so we reward them with pensions and all kinds of things. Free medical care if they get shot, all kinds of stuff. With our soldiers, we give them combat bonuses. We provide them with a lifetime of medical care. We give them dental. We give them pharmaceuticals. We even pay for 100% of their college tuition, cover up to 100% of the cost of their housing while they're in school, and give them $1,000 a year for books. because they were willing to run into or to face gunfire. But our children? This is from the American Journal of Medicine. Quote, in 2017, there were 144 police officers in America who died in the line of duty, including for all medical reasons. About 1,000 active duty military throughout the world, American military, who died of all causes. Whereas in that same year, 2017, 2,462 school-aged children were killed by firearms. Since 1963, when the Vietnam War arguably began, when JFK sent advisors to Vietnam, since 1963, nearly 193,000 American children have been killed with guns here in the United States. More than 4 times the number of U.S. soldiers killed in action in the Vietnam, Persian Gulf, Afghanistan, and Iraq wars combined. Think about that. If you want to know what a society values, look who it's protecting and who it's letting die, basically. Of that 144 police officers who died in 2017, about 50 of them died from gunfire. So if you take, 50 cops a year going all the way back 50 years, and that's a generous number, you get a little short of 3,000 police who have died by gunfire since the year that JFK was killed by gunfire. But 193,000 children in that same period of time? For some reason, in particular, Republicans in Congress don't think that that's, even worth doing anything about. They are fighting to preserve the gun show loophole. They are fighting to avoid having a return of the assault weapons ban. They have diluted the Brady bill. 3,371 American children died from gunfire in 2019, enough to fill 168 classrooms of 20 children each. And they received no protection whatsoever from Republicans for sacrificing their lives to protect the Second Amendment. Instead, the Republicans continue to promote these loopholes. The Children's Defense Fund noted this year, quote, in 2019, 9 children and teens were killed with guns each day in America, 1 every 2 hours and 36 minutes. Guns killed more children and teens than cancer, pneumonia, influenza, asthma, HIV, AIDS, and opioids combined. While mass shootings grabbed fleeting public and policymaker attention, routine gunfire took the lives of more children and teens every week in America, every week, than Parkland, Sandy Hook, and Columbine massacres combined, every week. For every child or teen fatally shot, another 5 suffered non-fatal gunshot wounds. An estimated 16,644 children and teens were injured with guns in 2018, 1 every 32 minutes. Americans account for less than 5% of the global population, but we have 46% of all the civilian guns in the world. What we are looking at here, just like we did with tobacco, is the consequence of a multi-year, I'd say, going back to the 1970s. It's when the NRA changed from being a sportsman's organization to being basically a front group for the gun manufacturers in the mid-1970s. And in that, 55, 60 years, more or less, the weapons industry has spent hundreds of millions of dollars advertising these weapons and buying members of Congress ever since the Supreme Court legalized bribing members of Congress. In 2005, a Republican-controlled House, a Republican-controlled Senate, and a Republican President, George W. Bush, passed a law called the Protecting Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, which makes it impossible for the parents of dead children to sue gun manufacturers or gun sellers. I mean, this is just crazy. Conservatives, Republicans specifically, in Congress prevented the U.S. government from even legally compiling gun death statistics. So back to tobacco. We tolerated hundreds of thousands, about 400,000 to 500,000 deaths from tobacco every single year for decades, and didn't do a thing about it until the 1990s, when several democratically controlled states and some really brilliant lawyers got together and just kicked the ass of the tobacco industry. And now we don't even have tobacco vending machines anymore because kids can get access to them. I think we need to be protecting our children from guns. Call me a liberal if you want. We spend half of all discretionary federal dollars on our military and our police, and we spend 9% on our children. And now you've got Mitch McConnell saying, oh yeah, this Build Back Better bill that offers child care and pre-K, they're calling it the toddler takeover. Right. Screw the children, says Mitch McConnell. Republicans don't give a damn about children. They don't give a rat's ass about kids. They're all about the money, all about the profits. You know that money that the Democrats want to give to protect children and help children and strengthen our schools and build back better? Are you kidding? That money could be used for our military. That money could be used to more heavily arm Americans. I mean, it's just crazy. The Republicans gutted the Brady law. They refused to, I think it was 2005. It was during the George W. Bush administration when the assault weapon ban expired, and they refused to put it into place again. Ever since the election of Reagan, the GOP has embraced guns as part of their culture war against the American people. And it is having devastating results to our children. If you want to know who Republicans in Congress value, look at who they protect, who they fund, and who they let die. 193,000 dead American children since 1963. 4 times more than all the soldiers we've lost in all our wars since that time.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
So what do you think? How do we deal with this? What do we do about these Republicans and their gun fetishes? And welcome back. This is just crazy. This is just crazy, particularly when you consider the history of guns in America. That the whole point of being armed for many people in the United States, particularly in the South, at the founding of our republic, was to maintain slavery as an institution. Guns were expensive. Guns were hard to get. Guns were not always reliable. They were not the precision instruments that we see now. That was the big innovation that Mr. Colt made around the time of the Civil War, was finally developing a gun that was essentially mass-produced in a way that was consistently reliable. It was very much not the case 100 years earlier at the founding of the Republic, or 80 years earlier. Guns, our history with guns has been so rewritten by these guys, and the whole Second Amendment thing. I mean, this is the other thing that just makes me nuts. Is the Second Amendment was put into place for 2 reasons. One was to make sure that we didn't have standing armies during time of peace. In fact, this is the North Carolina Constitution in 1776 said, and I quote, "As standing armies in time of peace are dangerous to liberty, they ought not to be kept up." The Vermont Constitution in 1777, "As standing armies in times of peace are dangerous to liberty, they ought not to be kept up." In 1780, Massachusetts' Constitution, "As standing armies in times of peace are dangerous to liberty, they ought not to be kept up." 1784, New Hampshire, in their Constitution, "Standing armies are dangerous to liberty and not to be raised or kept up without the consent of the legislature." And this was the first draft of the Second Amendment, that the people have a right to keep and bear arms, that a well-regulated militia composed of the body of the people trained to arms is the proper, natural, and safe defense of a free state, that standing armies in time of peace are dangerous to liberty, and therefore ought to be avoided as far as the circumstances and protection of the community will admit, and that in all cases the military should be under strict subordination to and governed by the civilian power. That was the first draft of the Second Amendment, making it very clear this is about standing armies. Because standing armies during time of peace do what? throughout the history of, particularly the history of Europe, they overthrow standing governments. They're the armed people. So the whole point of the Second Amendment was to say, you know, we think that the states should control the militias rather than the federal government, because if you have one single standing army, it can overthrow the government. And we don't want that. In fact, the Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, this is the other thing right now, you know, the Defense Appropriation Act, the NDAA, is being debated. Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution gives Congress the power to, quote, raise and support armies, but no appropriation of money to that use shall be for a longer term than 2 years. It's the only place in the entire Constitution where there is a limit on Congress's ability to spend money. You can't spend money on the military for more than 2 years. Why? Because they were very skeptical about having a full-time permanent military. And now it is half of all discretionary spending in the United States, and 9% is going to our kids. This is crazy. We'll be back. It's 21 minutes past the hour. Stick around. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them. So I just wanted to flag a really thought-provoking piece that I saw over on Democratic Underground this morning. It's by a person posting there under the name of Max Rand B. MAXRANDB. And it's titled, I'm an American veteran. My fellow Americans, you need to get out of rural areas. Now, when I first read that, I thought it said you need to get out to rural areas, because that's the message that we're always hearing. Oh, Democrats need to reach out to people in red states, and red states are largely rural. And even in states that vote blue, like here in Oregon, we've got, 3 cities of consequence in this state. There's Portland, which is around 1 million people. There's Eugene, which is the university town. I don't know the population, but it's substantial. It's not 1 million people, but it's substantial. And then there's Salem, which is the state capital, another urban area. We've got 3 cities, and the counties surrounding those 3 cities reliably vote blue, and that's the majority of the population of the state. And then we've got all these red counties all across Oregon that vote Trump, Trump, Trump all the time. And they're the ones, by the way, that are filling up the hospitals in the 3 blue cities. But that's another rant. So anyhow, there's this constant drumbeat, this message, the person writing this thing over at Democratic Underground says, call me when Chuck Todd shows up to talk to voters in Pittsburgh instead of friggin' Beaver County, Pennsylvania. Exactly. I mean, the media is we're constantly seeing these messages. Oh, Democrats, you need to consider the poor, worried, fragile emotions of rural voters. Democrats need to reach out to the rural areas. Really? Max Rand B says, I would not be so pissed about this if just once since the creation of this country, anyone had suggested that rural America needs to talk to urban America. Just once. He says, maybe rural America should visit some inner city schools with their dilapidated buildings, broken desks, faulty electrical systems, broken plumbing and windows. Maybe rural America should come over and share a few pitchers of water with a Flint, Michigan family. And he goes on to talk about visiting poverty-stricken areas in cities that are poverty-stricken because of 400 years of banksters and real estate agents redlining cities and saying, oh, is this the only place you can live? He writes, maybe rural America can visit an area of 20,000 people that doesn't have access to fresh produce and groceries within 10 miles. Our food deserts. He said, maybe the problem isn't that Democrats aren't reaching out to rural America. Maybe the problem is that rural America doesn't give one beep about anything but rural America. He asked the question, why is this always a one-way street? Why is America expected to understand and empathize with rural America, he writes, but that expectation is never reversed. Keep in mind, 65% of America lives in cities. The vast majority of Americans live in our cities and the suburbs around them. And yet, because of the way that the Senate is set up and because of the way the Electoral College is set up, rural voters who represent a small fraction of the American population basically, control the agenda in Washington, D.C. and in state after state after state, and will have the ability, in all probability, in 2024, to even flip a presidential election. Is it time for Democrats to say, okay, we're tired, we're no longer reaching out to you guys. You can come visit us. You come to our cities for entertainment, you come to our cities for a vacation, you come to our cities to see Broadway plays and movies and things, you come to our cities for nice restaurants, you come to our cities to go shopping. Consider our needs for once, Republicans. Because the Republican base has, the Republican the Republican politicians have pretty much decided that people in cities don't count. They don't matter. And that's without even beginning to talk about, the racial dimension of all this, which is, I think, fairly obvious. Should Democrats reach out to Republicans in red states? Should Republicans reach out to Democrats? How do we put this country back together? I'll pick up your phone calls after the break.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
It's the Thom Hartmann Program, helping you win the water cooler wars. We'll be right back. So it's a brand new week, and well, it's Tuesday, but it's a brand new week, and it's a brand new fund drive, and so many ways that you can help support Free Speech TV. You can call 877-378-8669 and make your contribution on the phone. And also, if you have any message to pass along, things you like, you don't like, you want to see more of or less of or whatever it may be, those folks are there to they've got a little comment field where they can put your comments in it and pass it along to Free Speech TV management. Also, you can text FSTV, those letters, as in Free Speech TV, FSTV, to 44321. Easy to remember, 44321. Right? 4321, only with an extra 4. And that will, if you do that from your phone or your tablet, it'll pop up your browser to a page where you can just put in your information and make your contribution. You can also donate online at freespeech.org, the Free Speech TV website. With your online contribution right now, there are a bunch of goodies. There's the Free Speech TV bumper sticker that comes with a $20 gift. There's, with a $50 gift, your choice of the Free Speech TV viewer-designed bag or the Free Speech TV socks, which used to be $100, now they're $50. With a $75 gift, you have your choice between the Free Speech TV hat or the Thom Hartmann Program official mug. With a $75 gift, yeah, there you go. With a $75 gift, you've got, oh, that was the $75 gift, excuse me. With a $100 gift, there is the Free Speech TV notebook and pen, or Leonard Moore's new book, Teaching Black History to White People. With a $120 gift, you have your choice of an autographed copy of my newest book, The Hidden History of American Healthcare, Why Sickness Bankrupts You and Makes Others Insanely Rich, or the Free Speech TV Solidarity t-shirt. Well, that's a $120 gift. With a $240 gift, we will open a Zoom, periodically we open a Zoom room, and we invite in our $240 virtual meet and greet folks, and we'll hang out for an hour and just talk about whatever's on your mind, or you can ask me anything you want. And with a $1,000 gift, get in line to come here to Portland and visit our very, very humble abode. And you can see how much can be done with very little, which is what we do a lot here. So all that said, and now is the time to please call and make your contribution to Free Speech TV. I did want to share something with you from Charles Schulz, the creator of Peanuts. This special little moment of nostalgia brought to you by Free Speech TV, which is asking you to call now at 877-378-8669 and make your contribution. Back on November 9th, 1970, Charles Schulz wrote a letter to a fellow by the name of Joel Lipton, who lived in Beverly Hills. I don't know if they knew each other, but obviously this is a letter in response to a letter from Joel. And in it, Charles Schulz, the creator of Peanuts, Charlie Brown, he said, "Dear Joel, I think it's more difficult these days to define what makes a good citizen than it has ever been before." Now keep in mind, this was the second year of the Nixon presidency. War in Vietnam was raging. Nixon was trying to churn up hatred among Americans, playing the race card with the Southern strategy. The cities were on fire. I mean, it was a rough time. So anyway, back to Charles Schulz. He says, "Certainly all any of us can do is follow our own conscience and retain faith in our democracy. Sometimes," Charles Schulz wrote, "sometimes it is the very people who cry out the loudest in favor of getting back to what they call American virtues who lack this faith in our country. I believe," Charles Schulz wrote in his last sentence, "I believe that our greatest strength lies always in the protection of our smallest minorities." Isn't that amazing? So, your moment of nostalgia brought to you by Free Speech TV, which is at this moment, right now, and at all times, here for you. Free Speech TV is doing its fund drive. It's winter fund drive. It's holiday fund drive. It is the end of the year. If you itemize your tax deductions, this is a tax-deductible contribution. If you don't, it's still going to a worthy purpose. You can make contributions in one of two different kind of ways. I'm not talking about how to get the contribution to them, but there's basically two kinds of contributions. One is the one-off, which is where you call and say, "Yes, I'd like to give you $100 today. And by the way, I want that Free Speech TV notebook and pen." That's, or $120. I want Tom's new book. By the way, these make great gifts. So there's that. Or you can say, "Please, here's my credit card, and please just charge, $5 a month to it, or $50 a month to it, or whatever you're comfortable with." In my mind, when I do these recurring kind of donations, I donate to Free Speech TV, but also to other groups. I'm always thinking, am I willing to give up? What am I willing to give up? Would it be a meal? Well, that's like, here in Portland, $40, $50 a month. Give up one good meal, or is it, a Starbucks? Is it $10? Whatever. But anyhow, tell them to charge your card monthly. It's a really great way to help Free Speech TV. But please call now, however you're going to do it. Please call now. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. And welcome back. Oh, my goodness. Picking up your phone calls here, Mark in San Juan Capistrano, California. Hey, Mark, what's on your mind today? Thanks for listening to Sirius XM.
This is reference to what you were just talking about, the children's deaths compared to the wars, the deaths from the wars. Mm-hmm. And I just want you to understand, I'm not a gun person, so I'm not coming from that angle. It's more of a math angle with me. We lost 58,000 Americans just to Vietnam alone, and that's like half the total of the children's death through that, I think it's a 30-year period. And so I'm just trying to figure out what am I reading wrong in this? This is something I actually wanted to post on my timeline, but the math just didn't seem to work out for me.
I don't understand I mean, yeah, you had 58,000, soldiers that died in Vietnam, more or less. My recollection was 56,000, but I'll take your 58,000. And then, you had what, 10 or 15,000 who have died in Iraq and Afghanistan. I mean, the Gulf War, I think, was fewer than 1,000. Bottom line, 193,000 children killed in the last 58 years since 1963 versus probably, I mean, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but probably 80,000 soldiers and then, about 3,000 police officers. So you've got, more kids dying than you do soldiers and police. Now, I'll grant you that there are more police, that there are more children than there are soldiers and police. But that said, no other nation has these kind of numbers. We are the only country in the world that has these kind of numbers.
Oh, no, I totally agree with that. My point is, in the article, it says if you combine all the deaths from wars, it was 1/4 the total of the deaths from gunfire with the children. And like I said, just if you just took the Vietnam numbers, that's half of it right there. So
oh, interesting. Okay, that clip was actually a quote from the Children's Defense Fund. I'll have to go back and look at that. If your numbers are so it's more like half instead of a quarter. That's the point you're making, Mark.
Well, I'm not even sure if it'd be even less than that because, like I said, that I'm just accounting for the Vietnam War. Yeah. And the article said, the assorted wars. Like I said, it's something I really wanted to post, but the math's not working for me.
Well, let me check it out at the top of the hour. I'll check my own article. Mark, thanks for that. It's incredible. People, carefully checking these things. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. Vincent in Prescott Valley, Arizona. Hey, Vincent, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I'm going to postulate two things, and I want to know if you can address them. One, given the fact that the right wing is arming itself to the teeth, which you broadcast all the time, and given the history that any major country that's changed from capitalist to socialist, it's taken a violent revolution. Is there another way that we can do it here?
If you're talking Marxist socialism, I'm not an advocate of that here, and I don't know anybody who is. Do you?
Yeah, but I want to know, is there any other way to do it than
Why would you want to? Why would you want to turn the United States into the Soviet Union?
No, I don't. I don't want that. I want to know, is there a way to bring about more social benefits for the workers in this country without violence?
Yeah, you do it through Congress. I mean, you do it through legislation. This is what Build Back Better is not socialism, but it's building a social safety net. It's what you would call what the Scandinavians refer to as democratic socialism, but that's not Marxist socialism. And that didn't require a violent revolution in Norway or in Sweden or in Denmark or frankly in Germany or France or Italy or Greece or any the United Kingdom or any of the other countries that have adopted those kind of things. So no. Bill in Naperville, Illinois. Hey, Bill, what's up?
Yeah, hi. Just real quick, I have a problem with that socialism. I think that should be more rightly called pro-society legislation.
Yeah, I'm with you. We always get stuck in a swamp when people start using the word socialism and not clearly defining it.
Yeah, it's too easy to get beaten over the head with socialism because of the connection with the Soviet Union, and that's why the Republicans use that. But beyond that, as far as the whole firearm safety thing, I don't know if you're a watcher of 60 Minutes. I think they do a lot of good reporting, but a few weeks ago they had two people on there, two guys. They're going around the country. They're from Missouri, trying to loosen gun laws throughout the country. And to me, I was appalled to hear that, but more appalling was one of the two guys there, he mentioned that his 7-year-old son owned several guns.
There you go.
And the interviewer did not call him on that, but I looked it up, and there's no minimum age in the state of Missouri to own a firearm.
Yeah. You wonder if he lets his kids smoke cigarettes, too.
Yeah, I don't know, but I almost fell out of my seat when I heard that. And one final thing is that they used to throw this statistic around a lot about firearms in the U.S. are used like 2 million times a year to protect private individuals by themselves. But I looked that up, and what that is based on is polling.
I know.
Where people call you and ask you, did you use your firearm?
I know. It's a BS statistics. Yeah, John Lott used to use that all the time when I used to, back when I bothered debating this issue with people. And it's just it's a fallacy. It's essentially a made up number.
And for every criminal violent use of a firearm, there's a police report. So as far as I'm concerned, if there's no police report associated with somebody using a gun to protect themselves, then it's just an anecdote and it's not data.
Yeah, the question in my mind is why Republicans are okay with 190,000 children dying, more children dying than die in wars, more children than dying than police officers die in the line of duty. And this is unique to the United States. This is not happening in Canada. This is not happening in any European country. This is not happening in South Korea or Japan or Taiwan. This is not happening, frankly, even in many developing countries. It's not happening in India. Why are Republicans okay with this? Why do they keep pushing this? What is it about children that Republicans hate? Is it that they're born? Yeah. I know that they love them before they're born, but is it that once they come into the world, they might represent the possibility that some rich person is going to get taxed to help pay for their education? Is that it? I don't understand. Why do Republicans hate children? I'm just, I put it out there. Maybe somebody knows the answer. I don't know the answer. Do you, Bill?
Hate may not be the right word, but ambivalence.
Why do they celebrate this? I mean, it's like, look at Lauren Boebert running around with all her guns. Look at Congressman Tom Massey today, or not today, a couple days ago, tweeting out him and his whole family. He's holding a fully automatic machine gun, and the rest of his family are holding semi-automatic weapons of war. And this is their friggin' Christmas card? What is wrong with these people?
I live in the Chicago area. They always like to point at Chicago. But if you look at Chicago statistics in the past, per capita, gun violence was worse in the past, and they passed a lot of meaningful legislation and really brought that down. But when these stupid Supreme Court cases came up, which made proliferation of guns more easy, then these guns start flowing, and Chicago was forced to loosen their firearm restrictions. So therefore, what do you have now? People shooting people there left and right, even though on a per capita basis.
I can't speak to the specifics of that, but I do know, Bill, from reporting that I've shared on this program earlier, in earlier months or years, that the majority of the weapons that are seized in Chicago are coming from Indiana. You've got gun stores right there on the border. Yeah. That was Mike Pence's great contribution to Illinois. Bill, I got to move along, but thank you for the call. Michael in Joliet, Illinois. Hey, speaking of Illinois, hey, Michael, what's up?
Yeah, just a couple miles south of Naperville. Yeah, Chicago area. No, I'm a community organizer, and I know people that are doing progressive community organizing, not democratic politics, but progressive issue organizing in rural areas. And people in those areas, I think, deserve, we should build relationships with them. 3 years ago, I door-knocked in rural Pennsylvania, only small Republican towns. 60% of people in conversations supported marriage equality. We got 60% supporting a $15 minimum wage. And what shocked me, 80% wanted a wealth tax in America on planes, big mansions, second houses, things like that. So these Republican people in rural areas are economically populist. We have to find a way to bring them along with us, not necessarily just democratic politics, but through organizing.
Oh, I agree. And I think that if you put up genuinely progressive candidates in these rural areas, in many cases, they will win elections. And again, I refer people to what happened when Bernie Sanders ran, in the primary in West Virginia and took every single county in the state. Rural voters understand what's going on, just like urban voters do. What baffles me, and I think this person writing the op-ed over at DU, is why the media seems so obsessed with telling Democrats that you have to pay attention to these rural voters, okay, we're paying attention to rural voters, but nobody is saying to Republicans, you've got to pay attention to urban voters. You've got to pay attention to what's going on in the cities. No, they just write it off and, come up with all their weird tropes. Michael, thank you. And thanks for thank you specifically for being an organizer in rural America.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Progressive messages sell everywhere in the country. It's pretty straightforward. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Mike in Chicago. Hey, Mike, what's up?
How you doing, sir? Thank you for having me. I live in Chicago, and I've seen 10 years ago, I was very much against guns. I was an advocate against guns. And I've changed. I've seen it. I heard the previous caller say, the violence in Chicago, how it is. And I live there. I live in the city, and it's just gotten so bad, and they passed so many gun laws to stop it. The other gentleman said that it was worse before. I'm not so sure. We've had 6,800 shootings in the last 18 months. 6,800. And they passed some draconian gun laws that, it's not working. Now, we just had a guy shot about a block from my house the other day, 6 times in the leg because he intervened in an argument between a clerk and a store person. And he said, hang on a second. He went in his car. He shot him 6 times, and that's for getting involved in an argument. Yeah. And that's just like nothing. And
Mike, what do you think is the difference between Chicago and, say, a similarly sized city in Connecticut or New Jersey that does not have this kind of level of gun violence?
Well, I can't. I don't know.
I'll tell you what the difference is. The northeastern states are all surrounded by states that have those kind of draconian gun laws that Illinois has and that Chicago has that you're decrying. They all have them. And therefore, you're not seeing guns pouring into any of those cities from a neighboring state like Indiana. Indiana is supplying the majority of weapons used in crimes and in killings in Illinois. And if Indiana didn't do that, if you had gun control in Indiana, you wouldn't have this problem in Illinois.
Okay. I do know that. I do.
You can look it up.
I've heard of that. Yeah, Indiana does. You're correct.
You got gun stores. You got gun stores literally on the border.
Correct. I lived in Riverdale, and we had a store there. I forget the name, but it was always on the news. They always protested the store. But I continue to say this though. I know a lot of African American friends of mine. They are now become pro-gun.
Oh, I know. Our society has become more violent as a result of this proliferation of guns. It's very simple. If you have more guns, you're going to have more gun killings. You're going to have more gun suicides. You're going to have more accidental gun deaths and injuries. It's just, this is just common sense. It's, we are 4% of the world's population, and we have 46% of the world's civilian guns. Therefore, we're going to have wildly disproportionate numbers when it comes to gun deaths, and people are not going to feel safe. I mean, we had a guy yesterday here in Portland that got shot dead by the police on the freeway because he carjacked. He broke into somebody's house, grabbed their car keys, stole their car, ran into another car, carjacked that car, shot the woman in the stomach, and went on the freeway going in the wrong direction. The cops shot him. I mean, this guy should not have had a gun. We have way too many guns in this country, and I get it. There are a lot of people who are saying, okay, if the other side is armed, I'm not going to be disarmed. I get that. I'm not saying that's an irrational impulse, Mike. In many cases, it's an entirely rational impulse. But there are huge dangers associated with that. You bring a gun into a house and you triple the odds that somebody's going to commit suicide with a gun. Probably not the gun owner, actually. Very often the children. But, Mike, I got to run. But, I totally get what you're saying. We'll be right back. It's 10 minutes before the hour. Our 1 hour free podcast recaps our show, and it's available wherever fine podcasts are found. And we have the full 3 hour podcast available over at thomhartmann.com if you want to really support our program. So there's this group in Stockholm, Sweden. It's called the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance. They are, world famous. Every year they release, or periodically, they release a report called The Global State of Democracy. And they just released their 2021 version of this. And in this, they point out that the world is becoming more authoritarian, I'm quoting from their report, as non-democratic regimes become even more brazen in their repression, and many democratic governments suffer from backsliding by adopting their tactics of restricting free speech and weakening the rule of law. Now, who is backsliding? They go on to say the United States is backsliding. The bastion of global democracy, the United States, fell victim to authoritarian tendencies itself and was knocked down a significant number of steps on the democratic scale. We are a backsliding nation. There's a whole video about this over at thomhartmann.com. Check it out. And welcome back, Tim in Aloha. Hey, Tim, what's up?
Yeah, the answers are pretty simple. Every time...
The answer to what?
To what's going on in terms of these mass shootings and the Republican ideology. They celebrate every time they have a mass shooting because what that does, all it does is shore up their voter base. It's as simple as that. There's no question of that. What Trump needs to do if he's planning to run again or they want to take over the House and Senate is to put pictures together of their leading Republicans in the House, the Senate, even Trump, taking pictures with all these mass killers. That's what's going to work for him. As stupid and as sick as that sounds.
No, you're right. You've got Republicans rushing out to embrace Kyle Rittenhouse, for example.
Right. And Trump had a picture taken with him.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the conversation behind the scenes with that? My goodness, that's the scary part. As far as the Republicans and what they feel about kids, ordinarily, if they keep society the way they want it, and there's an elite few in control of power, both the political and economic power, what are they going to want lower and middle class kids to be born for? You see what I mean? They're not going to be registered Republicans.
So they're opposed to abortion for poor women, but they're in favor of more guns in poor neighborhoods.
Correct.
I don't get where there's any consistency in that at all. It seems to me, Tim, that what this is all about is not, these kind of weird conspiracy theories that you and I are discussing. I think this boils down to one thing: money. The NRA
Absolutely.
and the gun manufacturers have showered hundreds of millions of dollars on Republican politicians since the mid-1970s. And those Republican politicians, in turn, have made America a dangerous place.
And we talked before, Tom. I was in sales and marketing for 35 years, so I dealt with credit unions, banks, insurance companies. It's about demographics and market share. That's what the program is, and bad news sells, unfortunately,
Yeah.
And that's the situation we're in.
Yeah.
If the bottom line is profitable, that's the way they're going to go.
I'm with you. Tim, thank you for the call. Nancy in Elkhart, Indiana. Hey, Nancy, what's up? Speaking
hi.
of Indiana.
Yeah. The gentleman that was just on, I have always thought, just like you have said, the money, the gun manufacturers, anybody that's in business does research. And I maybe I'm not that smart, but it seems to me I think you've convinced me, you follow the money. And gun manufacturers, they've known the crisis in our country and the idea of cultural. We have, ever since back in what's the Brown versus the Board of Education?
1954, yeah.
Right, the white supremacy, and then when the hunters and NRA, they were making money, and if they become a minority themselves, well, and then the white supremacists were seeing that the amount of minorities was rising, and if they were going to, just like you said, if they were going to have guns, well, those white supremacist old men, I call them old men because they've been around since then. And if they're going to have, they want to have a culture war, they're all going to want guns. And they don't care if it goes to the idea of killing children. Well, I think they think that's a risk.
Yeah, that's the cost of making billions in profit selling weapons in the United States. And
yes, I do believe that.
Yeah, and they did their market research, and they consulted their psychologists who consult with advertising folks, and they found that there's a lot of men who are insecure about their masculinity. We'll sell guns to them; they'll love that. Let's come out with an AR-15, a giant prosthetic penis for these men. And they also found that people are afraid of crime because there's guns out there. So what's the solution? More guns. You need to buy a gun to protect yourself. It's like every possible social ill that comes as a consequence of having a heavily armed society, and we are the only heavily armed democracy, full democracy in the world. Every social ill that comes along with that, the answer to that social ill, according to the manufacturers of these very weapons, is more of these weapons. And I'm saying enough. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Well, and the most expensive ones can be purchased by the white supremacist males. I hate to keep saying males, but yeah. I'm sorry. I believe that's the ones that are buying them. Well,
by and large, yeah.
And I'm so thankful that the people like you are bringing it to the front. I've thought for years and years it's got to be done, and if we don't do something about it, it's just going to get worse until the younger crowd, who I think have more intelligence now. So,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Nancy, and point taken. Oh boy, what a day, huh? And a lot going on here. Coming up next. Should we have national service for everyone in the United States? Should we reinstitute the draft? Should it include women? Is this a way to strengthen America, or would this harm our country? We'll have that conversation right after the
break. You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are HelloFresh, the #1 meal kit delivery service. More info at HelloFresh.com, code TOM. CB Distillery, CBD for sleep and pain relief. More info is available at CBDistillery.com, code TOM. Ground News, a well-rounded perspective for news readers. More info at ground.news/Tom. Angie, for any project on your to-do list. More info at Angie.com. Dinovite, a whole food supplement for your pet's immune system. More info at Dinovite.com. And ExpressVPN, the VPN that just works. More information at ExpressVPN.com/Tom.
So it's a brand new week, and well, it's Tuesday, but it's a brand new week, and it's a brand new fun to drive, and so many ways that you can help support Free Speech TV. You can call 877-378-8669 and make your contribution on the phone. And also, if you have any message to pass along, things you like, you don't like, you want to see more of or less of or whatever it may be, those folks are there to they've got a little comment field where they can put your comments in it and pass it along to Free Speech TV management. Also, you can text FSTV, those letters as in Free Speech TV, FSTV, to 44321. Easy to remember, 44321. 4321, only with an extra 4. And that will, if you do that from your phone or your tablet, it'll pop up your browser to a page where you could just put in your information and make your contribution. You can also donate online at freespeech.org, the Free Speech TV website. With your online contribution right now, there are a bunch of goodies. There's the Free Speech TV bumper sticker that comes with a $20 gift. There's, with a $50 gift, your choice of the Free Speech TV viewer-designed bag or the Free Speech TV socks, which used to be $100, now they're $50. With a $75 gift, you have your choice between the Free Speech TV hat or the Thom Hartmann Program official mug. With a $75 gift, yeah, there you go. With a $75 gift, you've got, oh, that was the $75 gift, excuse me. With a $100 gift, there is the Free Speech TV notebook and pen or Leonard Moore's new book, Teaching Black History to White People. With a $120 gift, you have your choice of an autographed copy of my newest book, The Hidden History of American Healthcare, Why Sickness Bankrupts You and Makes Others Insanely Rich, or the Free Speech TV Solidarity t-shirt. Well, that's a $120 gift. With a $240 gift, we will open a Zoom, periodically we open a Zoom room, and we invite in our $240 virtual meet and greet folks, and we'll hang out for an hour and just talk about whatever's on your mind, or you know, you can ask me anything you want. And with a $1,000 gift, get in line to come here to Portland and visit our very, very humble abode. And you can see, you know, how much can be done with very little, which is what we do a lot here. So all that said, and now is the time to please call and make your contribution to Free Speech TV. I did want to share something with you from Charles Schulz, the creator of Peanuts. This special little moment of nostalgia brought to you by Free Speech TV, which is asking you to call now at 877-378-8669 and make your contribution. Back on November 9th, 1970, Charles Schulz wrote a letter to a fellow by the name of Joel Lipton, who lived in Beverly Hills. I don't know if they knew each other, but obviously this is a letter in response to a letter from Joel. And in it, Charles Schulz, the creator of Peanuts, Charlie Brown, he said, "Dear Joel, I think it's more difficult these days to define what makes a good citizen than it has ever been before." Now keep in mind, this was the second year of the Nixon presidency. War in Vietnam was raging. Nixon was trying to churn up hatred among Americans, you know, playing the race card with the Southern strategy. The cities were on fire. I mean, it was a rough time. So anyway, back to Charles Schulz. He says, "Certainly all any of us can do is follow our own conscience and retain faith in our democracy. Sometimes," Charles Schulz wrote, "sometimes it is the very people who cry out the loudest in favor of getting back to what they call American virtues who lack this faith in our country. I believe," Charles Schulz wrote in his last sentence, "I believe that our greatest strength lies always in the protection of our smallest minorities." Isn't that amazing? So, your moment of nostalgia brought to you by Free Speech TV, which is at this moment, right now, and at all times, here for you. Free Speech TV is doing its fund drive. It's winter fund drive. It's holiday fund drive. It is the end of the year. If you itemize your tax deductions, this is a tax-deductible contribution. If you don't, it's still going to a worthy purpose. You can make contributions in one of two different kind of ways. I'm not talking about how to get the contribution to them, but there's basically two kinds of contributions. One is the one-off, which is where you call and say, "Yes, I'd like to give you $100 today, and by the way, I want that Free Speech TV notebook and pen." That's, or $120. I want Tom's new book. By the way, these make great gifts. So there's that. Or you can say, "Please, here's my credit card, and please just charge, you know, $5 a month to it, or $50 a month to it, or whatever, you know, whatever you're comfortable with." In my mind, you know, when I do these recurring kind of donations, I donate to Free Speech TV, but also to other groups I'm always thinking, am I willing to give up? What am I willing to give up? Would it be a meal? Well, that's like, here in Portland, $40-50 a month. Give up one good meal, or is it, a Starbucks? Is it $10? Whatever. But anyhow, tell them to charge your card monthly. It's a really great way to help Free Speech TV. But please call now, however you're going to do it. Please call now.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. So, do we need a national service for everyone? Different countries have experimented with this over the years. Back in the 80s, I lived in Germany, and at that time, in fact, I was living at the headquarters of the Salem International Organization, saleminternational.org, and they had a little, not quite a hospital, it was a health center there, with a physician and a nurse and probably 24 or so beds, as it were. And these little health centers are just kind of scattered all over Europe or all over Germany. And there were a couple of young men there who were doing their military service or doing their public service, their national service, by volunteering to work with the hospital. And, because at that time, and I'm not sure what the law in Germany is right now, frankly, but at that point in time, when you got out of high school, you had to serve 1 year. You had to give 1 year of service to your country. The majority of young men, and this was just men, the majority of young men did that in nonprofit areas. And you could do it in pretty much any nonprofit area that, served the people. And, a smaller minority joined the army or some other branch of the military in Germany. And what it did was it got them out, right? It got them out into the world. It got them, seeing different parts of the country. It developed a sense of kind of national pride. The other thing is that a volunteer military is something that, frankly, I think we should be concerned about. And traditionally, many countries have been concerned about it. It was certainly something that was, a concern of the founders and the framers of the Constitution. I shared with you in the previous hour some of the, how the North Carolina Constitution, for example, said, as standing armies in times of peace are dangerous to liberty, they ought not to be kept up. That was in the Vermont Constitution, that language. That was in the Virginia Constitution. That was in the Virginia Bill of Rights, 1776. It was the North Carolina Constitution, 1776. In 1780, it was in Massachusetts' Constitution. In 1784, it was in New Hampshire's Constitution. And in fact, this is the first draft of the Second Amendment. The standing armies in time of peace are dangerous to liberty and therefore ought to be avoided as far as the circumstances and protection of the community will admit. And that in all cases, the military should be under strict subordination to and governed by the civil power. That was the first draft of the Second Amendment, or that was the second half of it. It starts out, that the people have a right to keep and bear arms, that a well-regulated militia composed of the body of the people trained to arms is the proper, natural, and safe defense of a free state. In other words, the whole idea of standing armies being something that could overthrow a government. So with an all-volunteer army, you get much less, it doesn't reflect America. And, I think that one of the reasons, frankly, why the Vietnam War ended when it did was because Americans were sick and tired of sending their kids via the draft off to fight a war that they didn't believe in. And back then, of course, if you were like George W. Bush and your daddy was a member of Congress, your daddy could get you a plum, assignment to the National Guard. I would I would do away with that. I would say no more plum assignments for wealthy people or politically connected people. But our military should reflect America. You know, Jefferson back in the day said, in a letter to Madison in December of 1787, said, I hope I shall never see the day when paupers are willing to be shot at for a sixpence in America. I'm paraphrasing, but very, very close, something very close to that. And he talked about the need for a military that drew from all the people, the wealthy as well as the poor. Now, I realize this is not something that is super popular. I'll just put that right out there. That, you know, everybody give give a year to their country. But in exchange for that, in Germany, you got unlimited college education all the way up to a PhD or an MD for free if you did that year of service for your country. We are having a conversation in America about student debt and student affordability and free college. Why not marry the two? Why not say, you know, if you serve for a year, I mean, we're sort of doing that right now with the GI Bill, right? If you enlist in the military, after you get out, your education in a public university is fully paid for, 100%. Plus, you get $1,000 a year tuition, you know, for books. Plus, you get, if you live in a rural area, you get a travel allowance so that you can travel to the big city where the colleges are. So, you know, it's kind of a start. But basically what it does is it draws poor people into the military, which takes us back to Jefferson's comment about, you know, poor people being willing to be shot at for a sixpence. Here's my thinking on this in the biggest context. When members of Congress are deciding whether or not they're going to take this country to war, and make no mistake about it, we are closer to that than most people realize. With Taiwan and China and with Ukraine and Russia, there is a very real possibility of war breaking out, not to mention smaller conflicts around the world. And when Congress is deciding whether to send their soldiers to war, I would like those members of Congress to have children and grandchildren in the military because we had a national draft. And we see far too little of that. It's basically, you know, families of wealth. No, has anybody in the Trump family, for example, ever served in the military? No. In fact, Trump's grandfather was a draft dodger in Germany. It's why the Germans wouldn't let him come back. Explicitly, specifically, because he was a draft dodger. So that's number one. And number two is we do have a draft in this country. We don't use it. But young men, when they turn 18, have to be registered with Selective Service. Number one, why isn't that registration with Selective Service? Because that's limited to citizens. Why is that not simultaneously a voter registration? I mean, wouldn't that be a fairly easy thing to do when a young man registers with Selective Service at the age of 18, they are automatically registered to vote. And number two, women should be part of this. In other words, everybody is automatically registered to vote at 18, just as everybody is eligible for the draft. That was the bipartisan agreement. Democrats and Republicans came up with this in both the House and Senate for the military appropriations bill. Keep in mind, the founders, the people who wrote, or the framers, the people who wrote the Constitution, were so concerned about a standing army during time of peace that the only place in the entire Constitution where the government, where Congress is limited in how long it can appropriate money to spend, what period of time it can spend money over, was the military. Congress can appropriate $1 billion to build roads and spend it over the next 20 years if they want. But whatever they appropriate for the military cannot exceed 2 years. It's right there in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. No military appropriation shall exceed 2 years. Why did they put that in there? Because they wanted Congress every 2 years to be forced to ask itself the question, do we want to continue having a standing army? Now, since the War of 1812, that has been largely ignored, and passing the military appropriations bill every 2 years or even every year has become a normal thing. But if we're going to do that, if we're going to continue having this draft, and we are, why not A, tie it to voting, and B, tie it, B, include women, and C, actually use that draft? It seems like a straightforward process to me. And give people, college education or trade school or whatever they may want out of it as a result. But make it, extend it to everybody, and like I said, include voting on it. I just, it seems like a way to get people to meet people that they otherwise wouldn't. A way of kind of throwing folks at the age of 18, at a very impressionable age, at a developmental stage. It's a transformation of life. It's a coming of age moment. That's psychologically a good thing, right?
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
So, what do you think? Oh, by the way, it was Josh Hawley who said, "Oh no, we can't have women in the military in the draft. They're too fragile, And welcome back. And let's see here, Richard in Naples, Florida. Hey, Richard, what's on your mind today?
Yes. Hi, Tom. How are you?
I am fine. Thanks for watching Free Speech TV. What's up?
Well, I was listening to how humans, when I'm on the phone here, I can't listen to you on TV, so I have to listen to the phone version. And probably most folks weren't listening to that, but it had to do with the book that you are writing or have written about the development of the human brain and how it goes back billions of years. And what I'm really concerned with is that we have approached and are reaching a time in human history that we all agree has never, ever been reached before, and there's nothing comparable to it. So we have to be thinking wisely. We have to use whatever brain we have if we want to be surviving, if we want to be able to grow in a way that will let the human species survive. I mean, that is, I don't think anybody would disagree with that.
Right.
And I'm so happy that you are there to make it clear for folks that, what we have been doing is actually insane. I mean, the people who have been supporting Trump are, in fact, supremacists, abortionists, anti-abortionists and other causes that have been voiceless. And those folks just jumped at the chance to have somebody who would support their views. That somebody, as it turns out, Trump doesn't give a hoot about their concerns. All he cares about is himself, because he is insane, in my point of view. And I think in many people's point of view, including his own niece.
So what's your point, Richard?
Okay, my point is that I think one way to approach this would be to truly give everything we've got to convicting Trump of the crimes he's committed, not because we think that that's a good thing that will make us feel good, but because in that process we will learn an awful lot. The community will learn an awful lot about insanity and how the human brain functions and what made Trump act and what makes Trump act the way he does, and why people are supporting him when we all know that it's just not we. I'm talking about us, community, including you, of course, who know that this is an insane a way to do business, having guns, all over the place for the country.
Richard, I think it's a safe prediction that New York City and New York State, at the very least, are going to hold Trump accountable for his crimes in business. And it's probable, I think, actually, because there's a grand jury impaneled down in Atlanta, that the state of Georgia is going to hold him responsible for trying to overthrow an election, for that crime. And then you've got the January 6th commission, and if Liz Cheney's going to take names and kick ass, and she's saying after the first of the year they're going to have public hearings. I think this is a lot is going to blow up in his face.
Yeah, I agree, and I think he should be given the opportunity to plead insanity. I really do.
Okay. Yeah, I would not give him that. Right? I'm sorry. I agree with you. He's insane, but he's not insane in a way that makes him non-culpable. That should eliminate his culpability for the crimes he's committed. Richard, thank you for the call. A thoughtful call. I appreciate it. We'll be right back. Share the Thom Hartmann Program with your friends. We're available on SiriusXM, Free Speech TV, Pacifica, commercial stations nationwide, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, on the Thom Hartmann app, and you can even tell your smart speaker to listen to the Thom Hartmann Program. Back in 2019, a consortium of 37 nutritionists, psychologists, and other experts from 16 countries put together a study group and then issued a report. This is called the Eat Lancet Commission on Food, Planet, and Health, Lancet being the British medical journal. And what they found was that if we changed our diets worldwide, we could easily, or it would more easily, help us hit the planetary goal of raising the temperature of the planet by only 1.5 degrees, because meat production is such a large contributor to our greenhouse gases. They also noted a large portion of the emissions in the food system, 30 to 50%, come from the livestock supply chain. But here's the real kicker. They're suggesting basically that people should only eat basically once a week. And they said that just this one dietary change would save 11 million people every year in this country just because they'd be eating better. You can check it out at ThomHartmann.com. There's a whole video on it. And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And boy, so much here that we've been talking about. We're going to get to Troy Miller in just a little bit. Jeff in Jacksonville, Florida. Hey, Jeff, what's up?
Hey, Tom. So, first of all, my grandfather was at Pearl Harbor when it was attacked, and just wanted to say that. But mostly,
he was not one of the 2,400 people who died, was he?
No. He survived. He was a survivor.
I think it was 2,408, if I'm remembering correctly.
Compulsory service, and as much as I love Jimmy Carter as a president, I believe that his pardoning of the Vietnam deserters, or the ones that left the country.
He pardoned the people who went to Canada.
I believe that really affected our ability to have compulsory service. And
do you think anybody even remembers that, Jeff?
Thoughts on that?
I don't think anybody remembers that. And B, no, I'm serious. I mean, that was a long time ago, right? That was in the 70s.
It was, yeah.
And B, there was a broad consensus by that point in time that war was illegal, that McNamara had lied. First McNamara lied about it, and he kept that lie up for 2 weeks. Lyndon Johnson bought that lie and sold it to the American people. It took LBJ 2 weeks to find out that McNamara had lied, and at that point he was already too far into it to stop. And Robert McNamara is the guy, if you want a villain to blame the Vietnam War on. But by the time that Carter became president, everybody kind of got it that A, the war was illegal to start out with, and B, in 1968, Lyndon Johnson. I mean, the LBJ tapes had not yet been made public, but now they are. We know that Lyndon Johnson had successfully negotiated peace in 1968 with the Vietnamese, both North and South Vietnam, and was going to ratify at the Paris, meeting. And Richard Nixon jumped in and said to the South Vietnamese, "I'll give you all kinds of money if you refuse to do this," and they blew it up. We were over it. So I don't see how that makes people more or less willing to support a national draft. If anything, I think that's another strong argument about if everybody has skin in the game, and I hate to use that expression that the Republicans, love to use it's what they use to make 20% of Medicare not paid for by the government. But if everybody does have some skin in the game, as it were, then they're going to be thinking a little more clearly and a little more carefully about getting us into an unnecessary war, don't you think?
Oh yeah, I will not disagree with that.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, Jeff, thanks a lot for the call. Joe in Parker, Colorado. Hey, Joe, what's up?
Hi. Well, I wanted to basically reiterate what you were suggesting, is that when I was in the Army, and I was one of the last people drafted in 1972, my number was 87, they went to 96. And when I was in the Army looked like the rest of America.
Yep.
And, it was a good experience. I went to Germany, met fantastic people. In fact, I met my wife over there. And, there were several guys that I was stationed with that said they couldn't wait to get back to the world. And I thought, wow, you're really missing out on this experience.
You mean they didn't go visit the local German towns and things?
Oh, I was never on base on the weekends.
Yeah.
Had a BMW motorcycle. I was gone all the time.
It's like, join the military and see the world.
Yeah, these guys, though, they sat around the barracks drinking all weekend.
Oh, that's unfortunate. But still, I mean, your point, Joe, that back then the military reflected America. The one exception, of course, is very wealthy people. Their children did not go into the military by and large, unless it was, to fulfill some sort of ambition. But I think that there was that sense of national service when George Herbert Walker Bush volunteered for the military and ultimately, got shot down, as I recall. When Joseph Kennedy got shot down and died, Jack's older brother, in World War II. That was a sense, I think, of obligation to your country rather than just, doing something for political purposes. Joe, thanks a lot for the call. Your point very, very well made. We'll be back with more of your calls right after this break. It's 27 minutes past the hour. Stick around.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
It's the place where despair is not an option. The Thom Hartmann Program. We'll be right back. So it's a brand new week, and it's Tuesday, but it's a brand new week, and it's a brand new fund drive, and so many ways that you can help support Free Speech TV. You can call 877-378-8669 and make your contribution on the phone. And also, if you have any message to pass along, things you like, you don't like, you want to see more of or less of or whatever it may be, those folks are there to they've got a little comment field where they can put your comments in it and pass it along to Free Speech TV management. Also, you can text FSTV, those letters, as in Free Speech TV, FSTV, to 44321. Easy to remember, 44321. Right? 4321, only with an extra 4. And that will, if you do that from your phone or your tablet, it'll pop up your browser to a page where you could just put in your information and make your contribution. You can also donate online at freespeech.org, the Free Speech TV website. With your online contribution right now, there are a bunch of goodies. There's the Free Speech TV bumper sticker that comes with a $20 gift. There's, with a $50 gift, your choice of the Free Speech TV viewer-designed bag or the Free Speech TV socks, which used to be $100, now they're $50. With a $75 gift, you have your choice between the Free Speech TV hat or the Thom Hartmann Program official mug. With a $75 gift, there you go. With a $75 gift, you've got, that was the $75 gift, excuse me. With a $100 gift, there is the Free Speech TV notebook and pen or Leonard Moore's new book, Teaching Black History to White People. With a $120 gift, you have your choice of an autographed copy of my newest book, The Hidden History of American Healthcare, Why Sickness Bankrupts You and Makes Others Insanely Rich, or the Free Speech TV Solidarity t-shirt. Well, that's a $120 gift. With a $240 gift, we will open a Zoom periodically. We open a Zoom room, and we invite in our $240 virtual meet and greet folks, and we'll hang out for an hour and just talk about whatever's on your mind, or you can ask me anything you want. And with a $1,000 gift, get in line to come here to Portland and visit our very, very humble abode. And you can see, how much can be done with very little, which is what we do a lot here. So all that said, and now is the time to please call and make your contribution to Free Speech TV. I did want to share something with you from Charles Schulz, the creator of Peanuts. This special little moment of nostalgia brought to you by Free Speech TV, which is asking you to call now at 877-378-8669 and make your contribution. Back on November 9th, 1970, Charles Schulz wrote a letter to a fellow by the name of Joel Lipton, who lived in Beverly Hills. I don't know if they knew each other, but obviously this is a letter in response to a letter from Joel. And in it, Charles Schulz, the creator of Peanuts, Charlie Brown, he said, "Dear Joel, I think it's more difficult these days to define what makes a good citizen than it has ever been before." Now keep in mind, this was the second year of the Nixon presidency. War in Vietnam was raging. Nixon was trying to churn up hatred among Americans, playing the race card with the Southern strategy. The cities were on fire. I mean, it was a rough time. So anyway, back to Charles Schulz. He says, "Certainly all any of us can do is follow our own conscience and retain faith in our democracy. Sometimes," Charles Schulz wrote, "sometimes it is the very people who cry out the loudest in favor of getting back to what they call American virtues who lack this faith in our country. I believe," Charles Schulz wrote in his last sentence, "I believe that our greatest strength lies always in the protection of our smallest minorities." Isn't that amazing? So, your moment of nostalgia brought to you by Free Speech TV, which is at this moment, right now, and at all times, here for you. Free Speech TV is doing its fund drive. It's winter fund drive. It's holiday fund drive. It is the end of the year. If you itemize your tax deductions, this is a tax-deductible contribution. If you don't, it's still going to a worthy purpose. You can make contributions in one of two different kind of ways. I'm not talking about how to get the contribution to them, but there's basically two kinds of contributions. One is the one-off, which is where you call and say, "Yes, I'd like to give you $100 today. And by the way, I want that Free Speech TV notebook and pen." That's, or $120. I want Tom's new book. By the way, these make great gifts. So there's that. Or you can say, "Please, here's my credit card, and please just charge, $5 a month to it, or $50 a month to it, or whatever, whatever you're comfortable with." In my mind, when I do these recurring kind of donations, I donate to Free Speech TV, but also to other groups. I'm always thinking, am I willing to give up? What am I willing to give up? Would it be a meal? Well, that's like, here in Portland, $40, $50 a month. Give up one good meal, or is it, a Starbucks? Is it $10? Whatever. But anyhow, tell them to charge your card monthly. It's a really great way to help Free Speech TV. But please call now, however you're going to do it. Please call now. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, 34 minutes past the hour. Dave in Federal Way, Washington. Hey, Dave, what's on your mind?
Hey, Tom, I want to agree with you so passionately, well, as passionate as I can get, about voluntary service. Now, look, this does not have to be combat related. Look, I spent 25 years in the military, and here is what I learned, Tom. I was always looking for this magic, wonder leader. You know what I mean? This brilliant, charismatic, could solve all our problems. And here's what I learned. I went all the way up to the Pentagon, and no offense to anyone at the Pentagon, but I didn't find it there. Here's where I found it. You can never tell. People, oftentimes they rise to the occasion. They rise to occasions you don't expect them to, and it's really quite amazing to look at. And frankly, you got DeSantis starting these militia. This guy called in. He politely told you it's no big deal, that they just help during catastrophes and whatnot. But look, in the United States of America, if you want to have an armed organization, it must answer to the Secretary of Defense. And I'll tell you why. If it does not answer to the Secretary of Defense, it can demand a pass on anything. Like perhaps they only want to do war. Perhaps DeSantis militia will only want to do war against Muslims. Maybe it doesn't want to do war against Russia if it's needed and necessary and required. And we can't have that. We can't have a united nation. We can't have a united States.
DeSantis is just pandering to the fascist Republican base, to the fascists in the Republican base. I mean, I think that's fairly obvious, Dave. That's what he's all about.
Well, yes, and if this is all right, China has way over parity with us. They have way more soldiers. Russia has just as much technological capability. Actually, Russia has a professional military now, and there is some concern about them not being able to pay their pensioners and creating political instability in a nuclear-armed Russia. I mean, there are all kinds of things, and we haven't got time to go into all of them. But if you don't want a forced draft, America, if you don't want that, then you better think about bringing your genius to the table and getting involved.
Yeah.
That's all.
Well
and that's
said,
my main
Dave.
point.
Well said. Thank you very much, Paul in Zillow, Washington. Hey, Paul, what's up?
Well, I'd like to express an opinion also about mandatory service. I think I've thought for years it's a good idea. The day I turned 18, I registered first to vote, then second for the draft. The day after my birthday, I donated blood and went to an anti-war protest.
Wow.
But I think service like Peace Corps, AmeriCorps, which some members of my family have done, I think those are good alternatives. But I've thought for a long time that when you turn 18, you should have some period of service, maybe 2 years. Then you become a real adult citizen. And I'm totally in favor of free education beyond that point. And I think that should be kind of part of the equation.
Yeah. Well, Paul, thank you for registering your vote. I'm with you. Thank you very much. Chris in Littleton, Colorado. Hey, Chris, what's on your mind?
Yeah.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah. Hi, Tom.
Chris, I am not hearing Chris, so I'm going to go to Joan in Rochester, Minnesota. Hey, Joan, what's on your mind today?
Hello.
Hey, Joan. What's up?
Hi. Well, I just had a comment from your earlier show, and I just had an opinion that I wanted to express to you. And I think that the top, a big portion of our leaders are the very essence of man's inhumanity to man. I think that their supposed presence should bring spiritual, moral, and intellectual things to our country and help people in every way they can, instead of suppressing the vote, doing all kinds of things that are counter-effective and counter-helpful to the rest of us. They have a leader in Trump, and he leaves them all brown-mouthed and yellow-bellied, and they can't act on their own. They follow this leader like he was the Pied Piper, and they're practicing the wrong things in this country. The inhumanity that they're putting on the poorer people in this country, the elderly, the women, and as far as women in the vote, if all of these guys would send their wives, daughters, and granddaughters into the military, then I think they could go ahead and do that. But that would never happen because they're a protected part of the country. They protect themselves very well, and the rest of us have to fend for ourselves. Right. So I think we ought to really start looking at being a little bit more human to each other, and instead of making enemies of our friends, do like I did. I told a friend of mine who thought differently than I did. I said, you and I may have political differences, but we can still be friends.
Right.
And through that, you can sometimes, through your actions, show them the right way, rather than getting mad and doing things that they shouldn't. But our leaders we need a change in our leaders. We need to have them look in the mirror and see what they are and what they are doing.
Yeah, I do think, though, that, Joan, that one of the biggest problems here, and thank you for the call, is that in 1976, the Supreme Court legalized political bribery, at least cracked the door open. In 2010, they fully legalized it with Citizens United. And the entire Republican Party, as far as I can tell, said, cool, we'll take all the money we can get. Billionaires, corporations, fossil fuel, it doesn't matter, just send us the money. Guns, yeah, cool. And a good chunk of Democrats did initially, and they're backing away from that very quickly right now, which I think is a really good thing. But I think that's when the greed got in, and it's poison. It's just absolute poison. Stuart in Chicago. Hey, Stuart, what's on your mind today?
Read to you a 43-word sentence, may
I? Can you paraphrase it, please?
It's one sentence. It's Section 4, Article 4. The United States shall guarantee to every state of the Union
a Republican form of government,
and protect each of them against invasion and, on application of the legislature or the executive, when it's not available, against domestic violence.
Yes.
That is the only time where the word guarantee appears in the U.S. Constitution. Nowhere else.
Wow.
It's just amazing. You know, the Second Amendment, last night I watched the play Hamilton on television. And what was terrific about that play is that it was couched in the vernacular and language that is familiar to our contemporaries.
Mm-hmm.
And someone should, maybe I'll write the story, maybe you and I could write it together. Write a story, a one-day argument between the Federalist and the Anti-Federalist. There are people on two sides of the issue of the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment, when you read the guarantee clause that I just read, you then realize that the Second Amendment, at least the prevailing interpretation of the Second Amendment, is total BS. And those who negotiated its wording at the time knew that it was BS. And finally, once I said, okay, let them have it, everything else in the Constitution contradicts it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and the guarantee clause, by the way, Stuart, to the best of my knowledge, has never been adjudicated by the Supreme Court and has never been the basis of legislation. And frankly, I think it's powerful stuff, and it absolutely should be both. And it should be one of the reasons, why the federal government should be opposed to these voter suppression laws, because a Republican form of government, by definition, requires the participation of voters. And you've got state after state right now who are denying their citizens access to a Republican form of government. Instead, you're getting bought off forms of government, a completely different thing. So I'm with you, and I think that's an absolutely brilliant observation. Stuart, thank you for that. Jerry in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Hey, Jerry, what's on your mind?
Hello, Tom. I just wanted to speak to national service, and I wanted to get your insights. As, for example, the Israelis, men and women both serve, and they're proud afterwards of what they've done. And it seems to me that it might help them as individuals. It might help society as a whole. It doesn't have to be in the military, as you said earlier. There's all kinds of ways that you can be in national service, and I think everybody should have to do that. And maybe we wouldn't have some of the problems in the country that we have right now if that had been the case for a while.
That is my hope, Jerry, and I think that the experience of other countries bears that out. Although you never know, but it would be interesting to do a real deep dive into it, which you find policy papers essentially on both sides of the argument that claim to have solved the problem. I did get a note from a person in Germany who, while I was on the air just a little bit ago, saying we don't call ourselves democratic socialists, we call ourselves social democrats. And so please correct your language. I'm like, okay, all right, got it. Jerry, thank you very much for that. It's great to hear from you, and I'm spot on. Again, it's easy for old farts like me to say, oh yeah, everybody turning 18 should have national service. Be interesting to know what young people think about this too. It's 45 minutes past the hour. On the other side of the break, Troy Miller's going to drop by and just give us an update on what's going on in West Virginia, where the citizens there are trying to get Joe Manchin to pay attention to their needs rather than just the coal industries. We'll be back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
And, of course, we'll continue taking your phone calls, and I got to get into Josh Hawley and his whole manly man thing at the top of the next hour. Stick around. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Ron in Hammond, Indiana. Hey, Ron, you wanted to weigh in on the issue of rural versus urban folks?
Yes. First of all, I'm a long-time listener and first-time caller,
Thank
and
you.
I really appreciate your program. Just to circle back to your point about the media, not criticizing the Republicans, and I think the reason is Republicans don't need the urban people. Whereas I think the Democrats do definitely need to get out and try to get the rural support.
You mean because of the way that the Senate is organized and thus the Electoral College?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's disproportionate, and your point is well taken, and I think you're right. It's just that I think that the Republicans are neglecting the urban folks because they don't need them, really. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I think you may well be right.
Where the Democrats, I think, in terms of the disproportionate issue there, definitely should reach out and try to get, and they did, as you pointed out, in the past, Democrats did have the rural people on their side.
Yeah.
Or with.
Oh, yeah, right up until, basically the end of the 60s, I would say, up until Nixon's Southern strategy. Really until the Democrats said, we're going to give rights, with 64 and 65, with the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, we're going to give the right to vote and other civil rights to people of color. And that was the point at which white rural America said, okay, we're out of here. And, what a tragic divide. It's just terrible. Ron, thank you.
Right.
Thanks for that observation. It was a good one. Mark in Valley, Washington. Hey, Mark, what's up?
Well, Tom, I think you're being a little naive thinking that they would actually pass a draft that the rich and powerful could not evade. I could not see one Republican senator voting for a law that would force possibly their children or their donors' children to go to war.
Well, you don't know. I mean, during the Civil War, a wealthy person could hire somebody to stand in for them during the draft, right? I mean, it was perfectly legal. Wealthy families would hire poor people to stand in for their sons in the military during the Civil War.
Yeah, I think it was $600.
I don't recall, but it may well be. And we did away with that. In fact, we outlawed that. And
don't bring it back.
You may be right, Mark. Maybe I'm being naive here. Certainly we saw a lot of, edging around the edges of that during the Vietnam era. When I was there, I remember. You
only had to go to college, right? All you had to do was be in college, not to go to Vietnam, if I'm remembering right.
That's largely true, yeah. And that's how Dick Cheney did it. He got 5 deferments. So the first 4 were going to college. And then when he graduated from college and didn't want to go to graduate school, that's when he got married to Lynn Cheney. And so he got a deferment for being married. Well, actually, he got married and got pregnant, or she got pregnant all at the same time.
They'll all go to Trump route. They'll get medical deferments.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's always going to be ways around it, but you can, as a society, you can, number one, you can make it harder, you can make it illegal. Number 2, you can make it immoral. And, people were not ashamed. When Donald Trump got his bone spur deferments during Vietnam, I guarantee you he was proud of that and probably bragged about it because there was this perception that the war was illegitimate. When you have a genuine, legitimate conflict like World War II, You didn't see that. Draft dodgers during World War II were not celebrated. The conscientious objectors were respected, but not celebrated. Mark, I got to run. Thanks. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them. And welcome back. 10 minutes before the hour, Thom Hartmann here with you. On the line with us is my old buddy, Troy Miller. Troy was my collaborator in most all of the Hidden History series of books, editing my work and pointing out when I was saying stupid things. and he now works with Social Security Works, socialsecurityworks.org. Alex's organization has been on this program many, many times as their West Virginia organizer. The Twitter handle is Troy N. Miller. And Troy also has a Substack newsletter. Are you still doing that, Troy?
I am. It's blueridgebreakdown.substack.com, and it's I'm just trying to put out as much as possible, but there's so much going on. There's only so much time to write. I totally as you know.
I know it well, yeah, and I subscribe to Blue Ridge Breakdown. So West Virginia progressives are calling you guys. You guys are part of a campaign, and apparently you're using billboards to pressure Joe Manchin.
We're
tell me
using
about this.
Billboard trucks that we're sending around West Virginia for the next 2 weeks. They're right now planned to be in Morgantown, Charleston, Wheeling, Martinsburg, Clarksburg, Parkersburg, and Huntington. But there is a lot of interest from other groups around the state who are saying, hey, we'd love it if you can come here, and we'd love to do a rally with you. So there's one rally that's definitely planned, and that's coming up this Thursday. I'll be there. That's in Morgantown at 243 High Street at the county courthouse. The billboard truck will be there as well. And, we're taking the issue directly to Joe Manchin here. And the message is simple. He says he supports lower drug prices. And 90% of West Virginians are on a prescription medication or live with someone who is on a prescription medication. I don't see this as a progressive issue at all. I see this as very clear cut. You're on the side of pharmaceutical greed, or you're on the side of West Virginians who are demanding lower and more reasonable drug prices. And, the billboard says very simply, let me make sure I have the language right here. Senator Joe Manchin claims he supports lowering your drug prices. The Build Back Better Act allows Medicare to negotiate lower drug prices. Call Manchin at 304-342-5855 and tell him to vote for the bill now. Wow. And, it's very clear. I think this is one of these messages that once people hear it and know that this is in the bill, people overwhelmingly support it. And conservatives, independents, Democrats, Republicans, never Trumpers, pro-Trumpers, it is across the board an overwhelmingly popular thing to take on high drug prices and the pharmaceutical greed that is literally killing West Virginians and Americans all over the country. As you well know, we have collaborated on this and researched this in both your Monopoly book, the story of Alec Rayshawn Smith, who died after he rationed his insulin, and in the healthcare book quite extensively. Yeah. So I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but maybe your listeners, maybe there's a few in West Virginia, and if there are, I encourage you at the top of the hour here after this conversation to pick up the phone and call Joe Manchin at that number again. And, this issue, 25% of West Virginians, 1 out of every 4 West Virginian is on Medicare. And we have 35,000 kids who are being raised as their grandparents as their primary caregivers. That's about 8% of all West Virginian children. You take a classroom of 25 kids, 2 of them are going to probably being raised in a household where their grandparents are their primary caregivers. 31% of West Virginian voters, according to exit polls in 2020, are over 65. Another 35%, according to that, are over 45. So this is an issue that is going to, right now, improve the lives of voters, improve the lives of those kids who are at best, those 2 grandparents have paid in Social Security for their entire lives. At best, they have pensions and they own their own home and they're on Medicare.
and they are seeing their drug prices go up year after year. The price of insulin has tripled over the last decade. In West Virginia, between 1991 and 2014, the average rate of spending per capita on pharmaceutical drugs and pharmaceutical medications went up 6.8% every year. People are upset about inflation at 6.2 or whatnot at the end of October. Well, this has been going on for decades, and people are losing money on it and are making tough decisions between whether to heat their home for the holidays or whether to ration their drugs that they need or whether to skip the doses entirely. This is to me a no-brainer issue that is very clear. You're either on the side of more pharma greed and more executive payoffs and more lobbyists to be hired to tell us that this is impossible, or you're on the side of West Virginians who need more affordable drugs right now.
So if people want to learn more about what you're doing there in West Virginia, go to socialsecurityworks.org?
socialsecurityworks.org. On Twitter, you can DM me or reach out to me at Troy N. Miller. We are going to be all over the state for the next 2 weeks. We're organizing with lots of great groups around here. The Working Families Party in West Virginia is going to be helping us out a lot. And the Poor People's Campaign also. This is a real mobilization effort, and Joe Manchin needs to hear this.
What is the state of progressive politics in West Virginia, Troy Miller? We have a little less than a minute.
I'm, for a conversation that could take up a whole hour. I am optimistic. I believe that the state of progressive politics is positive here. This is a state that went all 55 counties for Bernie in the primary in 2016. The messages clearly resonate. And if we can get past the stigma of, socialism and all the BS that we hear on the national media, when you take the issues directly to people, in my personal experience, and I believe polling shows this too, people overwhelmingly agree with us on this issue and so many others.
Yeah. It seems like that's got to be the. I mean, I just keep remembering, that Bernie carried every single county in West Virginia in the primary. And
people think West Virginia is a very red state, but that happened in the last 10 years.
Yep.
And so we can turn this around. I'm optimistic for
I'm
one.
with you.
Thank you so much for the time, Tom.
Sure enough, Troy. Troy Miller, his Twitter handle is Troy N. Miller, and socialsecurityworks.org is the website. We'll be back with more of the Thom Hartmann Program right after this break. Stick around. It's going to get interesting.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are HelloFresh, the #1 meal kit delivery service. More info at HelloFresh.com, code TOM. CB Distillery, CBD for sleep and pain relief. More info is available at cbdistillery.com, code TOM. Ground News, a well-rounded perspective for news readers. More info at ground.news/Tom. Angie, for any project on your to-do list. More info at Angie.com. Dinovite, a whole food supplement for your pet's immune system. More info at Dinovite.com. And ExpressVPN, the VPN that just works. More information at expressvpn.com/Tom.
So it's a brand new week, and well, it's Tuesday, but it's a brand new week, and it's a brand new fund drive, and so many ways that you can help support Free Speech TV. You can call 877-378-8669 and make your contribution on the phone. And also, if you have any message to pass along, you know, things you like, you don't like, you want to see more of or less of or whatever it may be, those folks are there to, you know, they've got a little comment field where they can put your comments in it and pass it along to Free Speech TV management. Also, you can text FSTV, those letters, as in Free Speech TV, FSTV, to 44321. Easy to remember, 44321. 4321, only with an extra 4. And that will, if you do that from your phone or your tablet, it'll pop up your browser to a page where you can just put in your information and make your contribution. You can also donate online at freespeech.org, the Free Speech TV website. With your online contribution right now, there are a bunch of goodies. There's the Free Speech TV bumper sticker that comes with a $20 gift. There's, with a $50 gift, your choice of the Free Speech TV viewer-designed bag or the Free Speech TV socks, which used to be $100, now they're $50. With a $75 gift, you have your choice between the Free Speech TV hat or the Thom Hartmann Program official mug. With a $75 gift, yeah, there you go. With a $75 gift, you've got, oh, that was the $75 gift, excuse me. With a $100 gift, there is the Free Speech TV notebook and pen or Leonard Moore's new book, Teaching Black History to White People. With a $120 gift, you have your choice of an autographed copy of my newest book, The Hidden History of American Healthcare, Why Sickness Bankrupts You and Makes Others Insanely Rich, or the Free Speech TV Solidarity t-shirt. Well, that's a $120 gift. With a $240 gift, we will open a Zoom, periodically we open a Zoom room, and we invite in our $240 virtual meet and greet folks, and we'll hang out for an hour and just talk about whatever's on your mind, or you know, you can ask me anything you want. And with a $1,000 gift, get in line to come here to Portland and visit our very, very humble abode, and you can see you know, how much can be done with very little, which is what we do a lot here. So all that said, and now is the time to please call and make your contribution to Free Speech TV. I did want to share something with you from Charles Schulz, the creator of Peanuts. This special little moment of nostalgia brought to you by Free Speech TV, which is asking you to call now at 877-378-8669 and make your contribution. Back on November 9th, 1970, Charles Schulz wrote a letter to a fellow by the name of Joel Lipton, who lived in Beverly Hills. I don't know if they knew each other, but obviously this is a letter in response to a letter from Joel. And in it, Charles Schulz, the creator of Peanuts, Charlie Brown, he said, "Dear Joel, I think it's more difficult these days to define what makes a good citizen than it has ever been before." Now keep in mind, this was the second year of the Nixon presidency. War in Vietnam was raging. Nixon was trying to churn up hatred among Americans, you know, playing the race card with the Southern strategy. The cities were on fire. I mean, it was a rough time. So anyway, back to Charles Schulz. He says, "Certainly all any of us can do is follow our own conscience and retain faith in our democracy. Sometimes," Charles Schulz wrote, "sometimes it is the very people who cry out the loudest in favor of getting back to what they call American virtues who lack this faith in our country. I believe," Charles Schulz wrote in his last sentence, "I believe that our greatest strength lies always in the protection of our smallest minorities." Isn't that amazing? So, your moment of nostalgia brought to you by Free Speech TV, which is, at this moment, right now, and at all times, here for you. Free Speech TV is doing its fund drive. It's winter fund drive. It's holiday fund drive. It is the end of the year. If you itemize your tax deductions, this is a tax-deductible contribution. If you don't, it's still going to a worthy purpose. You can make contributions in one of two different kind of ways. I'm not talking about how to get the contribution to them, but there's basically two kinds of contributions. One is the one-off, which is where you call and say, yes, I'd like to give you $100 today. And by the way, I want that Free Speech TV notebook and pen. That's, or $120. I want Tom's new book. By the way, these make great gifts. So there's that. Or you can say, please, here's my credit card, and please just charge, $5 a month to it, or $50 a month to it, or whatever, whatever you're comfortable with. In my mind, when I do these recurring kind of donations, I donate to Free Speech TV, but also to other groups. I'm always thinking, am I willing to give up? What am I willing to give up? Would it be a meal? Well, that's like, here in Portland, $40, $50 a month. Give up one good meal, or is it, a Starbucks? Is it $10? Whatever. But anyhow, tell them to charge your card monthly. It's a really great way to help Free Speech TV. But please call now, however you're going to do it. Please call now.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And welcome back to the third hour of our program. Jennifer Crumbley, the mother of the shooter in Michigan, has apparently joined the ranks of women in the United States. This is not being a woman. It's something I don't completely understand. I mean, I understand the theories about it. But joined the rank of these so-called MAGA moms. The followers of Donald Trump's MAGA movement that are trying to follow the instructions of Madison Cawthorn. Madison Cawthorn, of course, is the preppy. I think it's South Carolina, maybe North Carolina. He's from one of the Carolinas. A member of the House of Representatives who's basically his claim to fame is that he says outrageous things. He likes to pretend like he's a tough guy. Like, people think he's been in the military because he's in a wheelchair. It was because his Beamer or whatever, his car got in a car accident. But he gave this speech recently where he said that the MAGA mothers need to be raising their sons as monsters. That was his phrase, raise them as monsters. And in fact, he said that the mothers, he said, are the most vicious in our movement. Now, I get it. He's trying to be Sarah Palin here, right? Mama Bears, the Mama Grizzlies actually was the, we will defend our young sort of thing. But what he's encouraging is not defending their young. He's encouraging them to turn their young into psychopaths, to encourage their young to be antisocial, to encourage their young to be, Trump-like or Crumbly-like. Back in 2016, Jennifer Crumbley, the mother of the shooter in Michigan, the Oxford shooter, wrote this long letter that she posted on social media telling Donald Trump how much she loved him and how wonderful he was, and how she wouldn't have any problem if he wanted to grab her by her private parts. And when her son got busted in school, or the teachers noticed him, shopping for ammunition on his smartphone during class, and found these drawings of people being killed in the school, his mother texted him, "LOL, I'm not mad at you. You must learn not to get caught." I mean, this is the sort of thing, that I would argue, and I think many would argue, that Madison Cawthorn and Josh Hawley and some of these other people, Josh Hawley, again, just knocking women out of the draft because they're just too fragile. And, men are supposed to be the manly ones here. In fact, Hawley is talking about, and Cawthorn also, this is from Cawthorn's speech. He said, our culture today is trying to completely demasculate all the young men. What does he mean by that? Well, in MAGA world, it probably means send them to college, have them get decent jobs, have them marry women who they respect, raise children who they love. These are all not masculine things in MAGA world. And you know, another example, Kyle Rittenhouse and his mother, Wendy Rittenhouse. She was every step of the way, as Amanda Marcotte writes in this brilliant piece over on Alternet, MAGA Moms Meet Madison Cawthorn's Challenge, Why Right-Wing Women Raise Their Sons as Monsters. She notes, every step of the way, she was a proud MAGA mom, treating her son, who shot 3 people, killing 2 at a Black Lives Matter protest, like he's a hero and blaming his victims for their deaths. A lot of people shouldn't have been there, she raved to NBC News during her son's trial. He brought that gun for protection. Right. And in January of this year, he was spotted in a bar partying with his mother and a group of white supremacists, flashing white power symbols with his mom in a bar with a bunch of right-wing white supremacists. I mean, this is, or Lauren Boebert, from Colorado, the representative from, who's got the Shooter's Grill and it just is a gun fetishist. Amanda notes, Boebert released a video showing her 8-year-old son singing, dancing, and playing with cigarette lighters while left alone in a room a few feet away from a high-capacity rifle. She notes, by August of this year, there were 259 unintentional shootings by children just in 2021. Again, we have about 40 or 50 police officers a year who die by being shot. You had 259 children who were shot unintentionally so far this year. But we can't do anything about that because that would demasculinize our boys and men. Because don't you know, those guns are just penis extensions. I mean, is it time to start the small penis gun club again? Amanda wraps up her piece saying, women can't be equal, so their only way to taste power is through men, especially their sons. That's what Cawthorn's speech was about, she writes, instructing women to sublimate their vicious urges, Cawthorn's phrase, by raising boys who are themselves vicious monsters, Cawthorn's phrase. And all too many are already heeding the call. This is just an extraordinary thing. And like I said, I don't completely understand this. What kind of a person, what kind of a mother would want to raise her son to be a monster? What kind of voter would vote for a politician like Madison Cawthorn, who gives a speech telling mothers to raise their children, to raise their sons specifically, as monsters? What kind of voter would vote for Josh Hawley, who sees women as fragile set pieces to be on the shelf, or as helpmates who should be in the kitchen, but not as fully equal human beings? Well, apparently a Republican. This is the doxology, the ideology of the GOP. And we're seeing in the abortion battles this reflected. Oh, these women, they're just not smart enough or capable enough or moral enough to make their own decisions about ending a pregnancy. That needs to be left up to the men who run the state, don't you know? So where does this come from? And why does it appeal to these Republicans? I'm genuinely baffled. I think there's probably a piece of this, some dimension of it, that has, Amanda Marcotte, who wrote this piece over at Alternet, is essentially arguing that these women are living vicariously through their sons. Maybe? Is it an assertion? Is it when the powerless assert their power? And sometimes, very often, actually, if you look back on your own life, the times that you've been really filled with anger or rage, Usually that comes out of a feeling of powerlessness. You know, trying to deal with some bureaucrat or some giant corporation that puts you on hold for 45 minutes and you just feel powerless and you get really pissed off. So is this an attempt among people in a society that has basically disempowered American voters? You know, sorry, voters, you know, this is what the Supreme Court said. Sorry, voters, what you have to say, what you want doesn't matter. Doesn't matter anymore. Because our politicians can be bought. And the Supreme Court legalized that in 2010. 5 conservatives on the U.S. Supreme Court said it's a good thing to have super PACs and PACs and political bribery and to say that money is the same thing as speech and that corporations are the same thing as people. And as a consequence, all across America, voters feel like nobody's listening to me. Nobody cares what I have to say. And so they're migrating to guns to give them a sense of power. They're raising their children to be monsters to give them a sense of power. Is that it? I'm baffled. But you know, I toss it out to you. What do you think? Why is this happening? Where is this coming from? Is this new or is this the most ancient thing ever? This idea that women need to raise their sons to be monsters. I mean, maybe in another era it was raise them to be warriors. Maybe we're just going back to the Viking. I don't know.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
But it seems not to fit in with our age or our era, particularly when, you know, you've got over 100,000 dead kids now from guns. And welcome back. Steve in Seattle. Hey, Steve. Thanks for listening to KBCS. What's up?
Hey, I wanted to ask you, back to the issue of national service, what do you think of perhaps making college education free for anybody that serves? And if you don't serve, you certainly have that option. Like if you're really uber wealthy and you want to, you know, get out of your social responsibility and you still want to go to college, then, well, maybe college should be really, really, really expensive. And that way maybe you could tax the rich without taxing the rich. What do you think?
I'm not a fan, Steve, of anything that gives people with a lot of money a loophole, which is what you're suggesting.
Me neither. I just really hate the greed involved. And, there's so much greed in this society that I was reading somewhere where there's 1% of sociopaths. And if there's, 320 million people in this country, that's still 3.2 million sociopaths out there.
And they're overrepresented in certain professions. 15% of CEOs, 12% of politicians. I mean, yeah.
That's what I hear.
Yeah.
And yet our society is always rewarding this kind of behavior,
Right, but I think if we did the draft the way that you're suggesting, that we would still be rewarding them. But keep thinking. You're coming up with good ideas here, Steve. Or you're dancing around the edge of them anyway. Jerry in Palm Springs, California. Hey, Jerry, what's up?
Oh, hello. A quick introductory. I'm 76 years old. I live in California. I was drafted in 1966. I was in Vietnam. I had a good job, worked in communications. Got out, and I went to college for free. I got a degree in geography and industrial arts, and then I went in the Peace Corps for 2 years, and I taught electronics in Morocco.
Wow.
And
what a fascinating life.
So I did both. I was drafted, and I was in the Peace Corps for 2 years. And I really think that having a required service for everybody is a good idea. We didn't have the nearest ladies when I was in the Army in Vietnam were the nurses in the MASH hospital that we were servicing in communications. In the Peace Corps, probably close to, I think, about 50%. Teaching English as a foreign language and so forth. Mm-hmm. And your experiences in both. In the Army, I was in Vietnam, but when you say, what countries have you visited? I don't tell them Vietnam. but I could take you all over Morocco and show you places that normal people don't see.
Because you'd been there in the Peace Corps.
Yeah. Oh, the Peace Corps people know the country better than anybody else.
Sure. It's almost a survival
all
skill.
the time.
Yeah.
You got to go out, hitchhike, or do whatever you can.
Yeah.
And then you start getting into, in different peoples. They're more familiar with the foreign languages of the country.
Jerry, is the Peace Corps still around?
I had to teach in French, so they sent me to French classes, but the English teachers and so forth learned Arabic.
Wow. Is the Peace Corps still around?
Yeah, it is.
We should.
I think so. It was. I haven't heard that it doesn't exist.
Yeah, I haven't heard a peep about it in decades. It seems. I mean, hopefully it's still around. I'd like to see that amplified because that would be a great, alternative to military service too.
When I was in the French, it's the corporal system. If they go in the Peace, something similar to the Peace Corps, they don't do military.
There you go, Jerry. Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll be right back. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. Back in the 2020 election, there were three issues actually that polled higher than President Biden did, and Democrats in general. And one of those issues was the legalization of marijuana nationwide, not just the decriminalization, but the legalization, doing away with marijuana on the schedule of narcotics, making it so that marijuana pharmacies and dispensaries could bank with a normal bank, all that kind of thing. This was so popular that a Republican now is getting ahead of this. Democrats, we are falling behind, right? This was more popular than Joe Biden. Democrats need to jump on this. Representative Nancy Mace, a Republican from South Carolina, has just introduced the States Reform Act, which repeals federal prohibition of marijuana, expunges federal nonviolent marijuana crimes, and promotes local ownership. We've got a video about this over at ThomHartmann.com. You need to check it out. And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you and Vicki in Chicago. Hey, Vicki, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. You're really getting us worked up out here, I'm sure. This thing with the monster kids, I'm not a fan of that language, but I'll have to find the article you mentioned. I think it's absolutely a very old thing, and it's an intersection of patriarchy with white supremacy or white privilege and how that plays out politically. And,
Explain.
It is, pardon?
Please explain that.
Because, like you mentioned, what was stated in that article is the women, the only power they can access is through the male, person.
Right, in their lives.
It leads to a lot of this, the old thing with the, southern white gentlewoman who's too meek and mild, but then acts out extremely vicious things through, she's through her husband or her brother or her father or whoever, or the sheriff as a proxy for their own internal violence. Mm-hmm. And it's to me, it's very much a subset of the patriarchal system, though, where just women are denied power. And, it just plays out in an extremely ugly way.
Do you think, Vicki, if we had a truly egalitarian society where women had absolutely equal power with men, and you saw as many women in CEO positions and in combat positions as you see men right now? In other words, if we, which is pretty much the case in Israel, for example, at least in the military, not so much in business. But if we saw that kind of equality in the United States, that we wouldn't then see women being encouraged by politicians to raise their boys as monsters, or we wouldn't see women wanting to do what Kyle Rittenhouse's mother did, Wendy Rittenhouse did, and what some of these other mothers have done.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, and we have seen it in history when we look at historical examples of other societies and some of modern ones where women have more equality. and we've got to deal with this. That's the bottom line, though. The whole thing with the abortion decision is just mind-boggling, where that's going to lead. But we've been warning about that for 40 years.
Yeah, it's the patriarchy
This is where
fights
the Republican win at any cost mentality. This is where it leads.
Yeah.
And the women in that system, in that political party, by personal observation, are very much part of this kind of mindset.
Yeah.
Of the male is supreme, and no offense to guys, I like guys and all that, but it's this obsequious, and there's a lot of falsity and deception that goes into the whole dynamic.
Yep, I get it.
Yeah.
Vicki, thank you. That was a brilliant and clear explanation. Thank you so much. Randy in Chicago. Hey, Randy, what's on your mind?
Hey, Tom, how are you doing?
Good.
I usually agree with you 99.9% of the time, but on national service, I have to admit, I think it would be a mistake in this country.
Because
you're not in a real democracy like you are in Europe. So now if someone like Trump or DeSantis was to get in power with a national service, they would turn it into a conscription army. And who's in the army? The young people. It would be a perfect way.
I think you're making my case, Randy.
Yeah, but they're going to get the young people off the street that would demonstrate against the government.
Exactly, and what do? They start sabotaging the system. And look at what happened in Vietnam. You had average soldiers who did not believe in the war, who did not agree with the war, who got drafted and sent over there. And there was a hell of a lot of anti-war activity in Vietnam. There were a lot of soldiers who refused to go out and kill other people. You had, there were even fragging incidents, which I'm not encouraging. I think that would be the defense against that. I'm far more concerned that if Trump became president, he would have an all-volunteer military where everybody in the military loves Trump.
That's a point, but also you have to remember now, you'll also be getting people that love Trump in the military also.
Well, but in a draft, you would have people who don't love Trump. You'd have people who really...
Well, I understand, yes.
So I think that's a defense, actually.
Maybe I'm looking at it from too much of a historical perspective, because my example was going to be the Romanovs of Russia from 1613 to 1917. It was their imperial army that kept them in power.
Right, but was it a conscripted army or was it a paid army?
Conscription.
Interesting. Well, I don't know enough about the history of Russia to be able to respond to that, Randy. Randy, thank you. Thank you for the call. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Boy, we got a lot to talk about. Picking up your calls right after this break. So it's a brand new week, and well, it's Tuesday, but it's a brand new week, and it's a brand new fund drive, and so many ways that you can help support Free Speech TV. You can call 877-378-8669 and make your contribution on the phone. And also, if you have any message to pass along, things you like, you don't like, you want to see more of or less of or whatever it may be, those folks are there to they've got a little comment field where they can put your comments in it and pass it along to Free Speech TV management. Also, you can text FSTV, those letters as in Free Speech TV, FSTV, to 44321. Easy to remember, 44321. 4321, only with an extra 4. And that will, if you do that from your phone or your tablet, it'll pop up your browser to a page where you could just put in your information and make your contribution. You can also donate online at freespeech.org, the Free Speech TV website. With your online contribution right now, there are a bunch of goodies. There's the Free Speech TV bumper sticker that comes with a $20 gift. There's, with a $50 gift, your choice of the Free Speech TV viewer-designed bag or the Free Speech TV socks, which used to be $100. Now they're $50. With a $75 gift, you have your choice between the Free Speech TV hat or the Thom Hartmann Program official mug. With a $75 gift, yeah, there you go. With a $75 gift, you've got, oh, that was the $75 gift, excuse me. With a $100 gift, there is the Free Speech TV notebook and pen, or Leonard Moore's new book, Teaching Black History to White People. With a $120 gift, you have your choice of an autographed copy of my newest book, The Hidden History of American Healthcare, Why Sickness Bankrupts You and Makes Others Insanely Rich, or the Free Speech TV Solidarity t-shirt. Well, that's a $120 gift. With a $240 gift, we will open a Zoom, periodically we open a Zoom room, and we invite in our $240 virtual meet and greet folks, and we'll hang out for an hour and just talk about whatever's on your mind, or you know, you can ask me anything you want. And with a $1,000 gift, get in line to come here to Portland and visit our very, very humble abode. And you can see, you know, how much can be done with very little, which is what we do a lot here. So all that said, and now is the time to please call and make your contribution to Free Speech TV. I did want to share something with you from Charles Schulz, the creator of Peanuts. This special little moment of nostalgia brought to you by Free Speech TV, which is asking you to call now at 877-378-8669 and make your contribution. Back on November 9th, 1970, Charles Schulz wrote a letter to a fellow by the name of Joel Lipton, who lived in Beverly Hills. I don't know if they knew each other, but obviously this is a letter in response to a letter from Joel. And in it, Charles Schulz, the creator of Peanuts, Charlie Brown, he said, "Dear Joel, I think it's more difficult these days to define what makes a good citizen than it has ever been before." Now keep in mind, this was the second year of the Nixon presidency. War in Vietnam was raging. Nixon was trying to churn up hatred among Americans, you know, playing the race card with the Southern strategy. The cities were on fire. I mean, it was a rough time. So anyway, back to Charles Schulz. He says, "Certainly all any of us can do is follow our own conscience and retain faith in our democracy. Sometimes," Charles Schulz wrote, "sometimes it is the very people who cry out the loudest in favor of getting back to what they call American virtues who lack this faith in our country. I believe," Charles Schulz wrote in his last sentence, "I believe that our greatest strength lies always in the protection of our smallest minorities." Isn't that amazing? So, your moment of nostalgia brought to you by Free Speech TV, which is at this moment, right now, and at all times, here for you. Free Speech TV is doing its fund drive. It's winter fund drive. It's holiday fund drive. It is the end of the year. If you itemize your tax deductions, this is a tax-deductible contribution. If you don't, it's still going to a worthy purpose. You can make contributions in one of two different kind of ways. I'm not talking about how to get the contribution to them, but there's basically two kinds of contributions. One is the one-off, which is where you call and say, "Yes, I'd like to give you $100 today, and by the way, I want that Free Speech TV notebook and pen." That's, or $120. I want Tom's new book. By the way, these make great gifts. So there's that. Or you can say, "Please, here's my credit card, and please just charge, you know, $5 a month to it, or $50 a month to it, or whatever, you know, whatever you're comfortable with." In my mind, you know, when I do these recurring kind of donations, I donate to Free Speech TV, but also to other groups. I'm always thinking, you know, am I willing to give up? What am I willing to give up? You know, would it be a meal? Well, that's like, you know, here in Portland, $40, $50 a month. You know, give up one good meal, or is it, you know, a Starbucks? Is it $10? Whatever. But anyhow, tell them to charge your card monthly. It's a really great way to help Free Speech TV. But please call now, however you're going to do it. Please call now. Our 1-hour free podcast recaps our show, and it's available wherever fine podcasts are found. And we have the full 3-hour podcast available over at thomhartmann.com if you want to really support our program. Welcome back. 34 minutes past the hour. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, your media support group for We the People. Dave in Charleston, South Carolina. Hey, Dave, is Madison Cawthorn representing South Carolina, if I'm remembering right?
No, he represents Asheville, North Carolina.
North Carolina. Oh, okay. All right. My apologies.
He's in the western. He's up by where Meadows used to be.
Oh, okay.
But my comment is I have a lot of in-laws. My wife's from Asheville, and I talk to my in-laws a lot about politics and very civilly. And I asked them, did you vote for this guy? And they don't even know who they voted for. You were asking, why would somebody vote for this guy? They don't even know. Most of the people up there outside of Asheville, they just pull an R,
Yeah.
It's just like pulling an R. They don't know who's representing them. I mean, and I asked them, Cawthorn, what has he done in his life? He worked at Chick-fil-A. He got in a wreck in Florida on spring break with his friend. What do you think they were doing, on spring break?
Right.
He worked with Mark Meadows a little bit, but he's basically accomplished nothing. And then he runs for Congress, and they don't even know who he is. He ran against a guy who was a retired colonel, who was in a judge advocate general. And I said, do you know do you know who you voted for? Do you know what this guy represents? They don't know. Yeah. They don't know, man. And it's a shame
like
that
tribalism.
They don't do any research whatsoever to find out what the heck this guy represents and what he's done in his life to warrant being a congressman.
Yeah.
It's sad, man. It really is.
Yeah, I get it. I totally get it.
It's insane, man. It really is. And I just think the Democrats should bring this stuff out, and start playing hardball on these fake patriots like this,
I'm with you. I'm absolutely with you. Dave, thank you. Very, very, very well said. Thanks for the information. Michael in Greenville, South Carolina, another South Carolina caller. Hey, Michael, what's on your mind today?
Hello, Tom. I am a very strong advocate for mandatory service.
Because?
Well, both of my wives, my current and my former, were military. I served for 20 years. I was in Desert Storm. I was a musician. 3 out of my 4 women that worked for me volunteered to pull duty as military policemen. 36-hour patrols out of camp.
Wow.
Yeah.
So is your point that women are adequately tough to serve in the military? What's the big deal?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Women, they volunteer.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I mentioned Israel earlier. Louise and I spent a lot of time in Israel back in the 80s. Mm-hmm. And, the military, people would be hitchhiking all the time. I don't know if it still goes on in the country. I'm guessing it probably doesn't. But we picked up a number of women who were hitchhiking with AK-47s or Uzis over their shoulder, because they were in the military.
Yeah. The women that I served with are awesome.
Yeah, I'm with you. Michael, thank you very much for the call. Gar in Decatur, Georgia. Hey, Gar, what's on your mind today?
A lot on my mind, Tom. You're hitting very important subjects, but I like to talk about guns. And the thing that we don't talk enough about is that the number one use of guns when they kill is suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And almost 2/3 of all gun deaths is suicide.
You're right.
And 97% of all gun deaths is a friend, a family member, or yourself. We don't talk about that. And another thing we don't talk about, with all this bickering going on, the most Americans killed in one day was during the Civil War. There's some reports over 25,000 Americans killed in one day in one battle of Shiloh and Antietam. They say some reports I've read was 24,000 Americans killed in 12 hours. Wow. So when we barking up these when we barking up these we don't like each other trees, and we talk about civil wars and all that. Civil wars are the nastiest wars of all wars.
That's
that
right.
was the most Americans killed it. We done had 75 wars or conflicts since the birth of the United States. And the bloodiest, the nastiest, the ugliest was our Civil War. And we don't talk enough about that.
Yeah.
We talk about Tulsa, we talk about Rosewood, but we never talk about the most Americans killed in one day was during the Civil War.
And Civil Wars.
It was nasty. 911 couldn't compare to that.
Yeah, civil wars are particularly vicious because people know the territory, they know the neighborhood, they know their neighbors, they know each other, and they use that knowledge to kill each other. I mean, it's just, it's
right.
unlike an invading army.
And the only thing about it, they only had muskets, bayonets. Today we got AK-47, we got AR-15. You know what a civil war would look like in the United States today? You're talking about 1 million people getting killed in one day. So we need to learn to get along.
I'm with you, Gar. I'm with you. Thank you very much. Yeah, very well said. Johan in Los Angeles. Hey, Johan, what's up?
I think I have an answer that you asked earlier this hour about the children, the guns and stuff.
Why are women raising? Why are Republicans encouraging mothers to raise their sons as monsters? Was my question. You have an answer for it?
I think, but I think this came from the identity of republicanism by Matthew Fry Jacobson. I'm sure you remember him.
I don't.
Oh,
who was he?
He said the founders assumed only white men had these qualities and characteristics, and that white women and people of color were not fit for self-government. Yeah, it's part of the American Revolution, Section 2, white supremacy and the Revolutionary period. And then he also had a naturalization law of 1790.
So, I mean, the modern Republican Party wasn't created until 1856, if my recollection is correct, in Jackson, Michigan. And so this would have been, he wouldn't have been the founder of the Republican Party. Are you suggesting that he was kind of the proto-Republican? He was the guy that they modeled things after? I don't get the association with this Mr. Fry.
Yeah, he kind of identified the republicanism.
Because, I mean, the word republicanism was used a lot back then. The original name of what we call the Democratic Party today, the name that Jefferson gave it when he created it just before the election of 1800, was the Democratic Republican Party. And the Constitution refers to a Republican form of government, Article 4. And you know, the founders and framers, they generally didn't refer to democracy. They generally referred to Republican forms of government, republicanism. But they weren't talking about what we call the Republican Party. They were talking about a republic, you know, a nation of laws that is basically ruled by its people, where the people vote for the candidates who will execute what they want done. But fascinating stuff, Johan. I'm going to have to do some research on that one. Thanks a lot for the call. Michelle in Van Nuys. Hey, Michelle, what's up?
I just wanted to let you know that my grandfather, who is actually older than my great-grandfather on the other side, left Ukraine because he was supposed to be drafted into the Tsar's army. And his family, luckily, at least were property owners, because in order to, the penalty for that was they had to find a replacement for him and pay a fine. And conscription was like for 20 years, I think, at the time.
Whoa. Well, that's very different than 1 year national service that I'm proposing.
Yeah, but that's what it was. It's like if you got conscripted into the Tsar's army, it was a lifetime thing. You know, that was it.
Wow.
So.
And was Ukraine part of Russia at that time, or was it a separate country?
Oh, yeah. It was part of it. But he was from about 50 miles outside of Kiev.
Fascinating stuff.
So I mean, you can't even compare, like when that other caller was trying to say that the army was supporting the Tsar. Not really. I mean, that's why you ended up with the Red and White Army, and they started, right around after World War I, when people, they terrorized people. There was so much fear before that, and then World War I, that's why you had that revolution.
Interesting. I confess, Michelle, I'm largely ignorant of the pre-World War II history of that region. So thank you for informing me.
Sure.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much for the call. Tony in Fort Worth, Texas. Hey, Tony, what's up?
Great show today, Tom, and great topic.
Thank you.
I am in favor of national service as well. And like I was telling your screener, I would actually go a little bit farther with it because I am 52 years old. I would have no problem doing national service. I'm one of your truck driver listeners, and this job, just like with the military or national service, there's no such thing as one color or one gender can do the job better than anybody else. I've seen people come into this job 25 years old and they're still doing it. Heterosexual, homosexual, transgender, whatever the term is now, women. It's the mindset of the person, not the color of the skin or the gender that determines who can do national service or who can't.
Yeah, I'm with you. The reason why, typically, I think there's a couple of reasons, but the main reason I think typically why, military conscription is at 18 more or less, depends on the country, is because that's kind of optimal fighting age, and also optimal indoctrination age. But it's also, from a psychological point of view, people need rites of passage when they make that transition from being essentially a child to being essentially an adult. Every society, every culture has rituals around that. In Catholicism, it's called confirmation. In Judaism, it's called bar mitzvah and bat mitzvah. Every society figures out a way. And the secular one in the United States is graduating from high school. Every society figures out a way to honor and actually have kind of a doorway through which young people pass when they become adults. But
at the same time, if I may jump in right there, because as the son and grandson of a war veteran, I can safely say, being 18 myself and listening to my father and my grandfather's stories, 18, when they give you that gun, you get that uniform. It's also, as you said, a rite of passage, but it's also that mindset. You're invincible. You're young. You're not afraid to die. You've got this gun. You're going to fight. You're going to kill the bad guys because this is what you've seen in the movies. Take your pick, John Wayne, whoever. You've got that mindset, and with all through basic training, that's what's put into your mind. It's not.
No, I get all that, but what I'm saying is that it's also psychologically a healthy thing for a society to have a rite of passage, and the extent to which people share that binds them to each other. When people go to a bar mitzvah, or when they go to confirmation, or even when they go to a high school graduation for their friends, their neighbors, their colleagues, kids, there's a sense of solidarity that comes out of that. And there's a sense of I'm making that transition on the part of the child. And this is all like psychologically really healthy stuff.
Exactly. I agree.
So therefore, I think that 1 year of national service, which, I'm guessing only a small minority of people would choose to do it through the military. And again, there you may have some self-selection process, which you could argue would not be meeting my goal of having a military that represents America. But, this is the closest I think we can get, would be the way to do it. Tony, thank you for the call, and thanks for the confirmation, no pun intended, of what I'm suggesting. We'll be right back. It's 48 minutes past the hour.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
We'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. Stick around. And welcome back. James in Seattle. Hey, James, thanks for listening to KBCS. What's up?
Hi. Mark Twain had in his book, it's either Tom Sawyer or Huck Finn, that his drunk gambling father was trying to talk to him and tell him not to get any more book learning. in his head. He just wanted him to learn to read, write, and do arithmetic.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the simplistic conservative mindset. They're really kind of lazy. They don't want to make decisions or think. That's work. And that mindset, you can draw a straight line from that thinking, which is separatism, to Nazi cosmology, to QAnon. You could just make a straight line to it. And it means that since they don't want to make a lot of decisions, they're looking for somebody who's smart enough or charismatic enough to take care of that decision, that kind of thinking for them. So,
do you think it's that they're lazy, or do you think that it's that they feel that deep down inside that they're just not that smart, or they're not that good, or they're not that worthy, and therefore they should, hand the decisions of their lives over to another person?
Well, when things are separate and they're not united like our consciousness as liberals, art, and science is concerned, then there is no real relationships. Mm-hmm. Everything is really fake. And they run through the world thinking that everything is a worldwide wrestling event where everything is choreographed and it's fake. They have their hand signals and their dog whistles to tell them when to act.
Yeah.
And they like it when change happens, when someone comes in. And Flynn said, he's doing the Hitler thing where he wants them to all become one church with one God, but it's Trump's church with that
Right.
Hitler.
Yeah, no, and Hitler had his own church. He appointed Bishop Moeller was his name as the head of the official Nazi church that replaced the Catholic and Protestant factions in Germany at the time. It's amazing stuff. James, thank you for that. Betsy in Klickitat, Washington. Am I saying that right, Betsy? I'm sure I'm not. Betsy? You are on the air? Well, I guess Betsy's not on the air. Eric in Erie, Pennsylvania. Hey, Eric, what's on your mind?
Hey, Tom, listen, I am absolutely for a national service program. Mm-hmm. And there's been, most of the callers are focusing on guns and wars and, physical strength and daring. Service is so much more than that. Mm-hmm. And if we look at the way our National Guard and other parts of the military, or like the Corps of Engineers and others, are involved in, building and rebuilding and modernizing when there's been a natural disaster. But the biggest thing is finding more places where Americans can be put together with a common cause, where othering is not part of that. Your background otherwise, religiously, economically, and whatnot, politically, party stuff, bunch of people in a chain of command with a common goal, and, people come out of that with a different set of attitudes going forward.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
I think it'd be great.
Yeah, and throwing people in with other people that they otherwise wouldn't encounter, and then they discover, hey, these people who look different than me, or think different than me, or talk different than me, or identify different, they're all humans too. We're all just people here together. Eric, brilliant. Thank you. We'll be right back. Share the Thom Hartmann Program with your friends. We're available on SiriusXM, Free Speech TV, Pacifica, commercial stations nationwide, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, on the Thom Hartmann app, and you can even tell your smart speaker to listen to the Thom Hartmann Program. 53 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. Len in Silva, North Carolina. That is Madison Cawthorn country. Hey, Len, what's up?
Oh, yeah, it's Madison Cawthorn country. And if he was had an IQ 4 points higher, he'd be a rock.
Okay.
Let me just give you a little bit of background on this congressional district, the 11th congressional district of North Carolina. Madison Cawthorn, and then you go back before Madison Cawthorn, you get Mark Meadows.
Uh-huh.
You go back before Mark Meadows, and you get Roy Taylor Jr., the first Republican. You go back before that, and you get Roy Taylor Sr., who was a liberal Democrat. And he's the guy that I wrote to help stop the bombing in Cambodia. But the biggest problem up here is so many people when they go to the polls, because I've sat at the polls and been a poll watcher, but they sit there and they don't pay any attention to who they're voting down ballot at all.
Right.
They're just
voting straight party tickets.
Straight party ticket, and it's unfortunate, and that's like the guy from South Carolina who told you that they don't know who they're voting for. Well, a lot of us do, but there's not enough of us out here who think about who they're voting for. I sometimes I don't know who somebody is for some of the really small local offices, but for the most part, I know who I'm voting for the House and the Senate and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, I get it.
And
So Len, you think that Madison Cawthorn is there not because people love him, but because they're just voting Republican, and he's the guy who won the primary.
He's also talking about moving to the Charlotte area.
Does that mean
he's talking about running there?
So changing congressional, is that because of redistricting, or is that?
No, that I don't think so. And the thing that I think about that is he might be pretty sad about moving over there, because I don't think they'll vote for him.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how it all shakes out. Len, thanks a lot for the perspective and the voice from North Carolina. I appreciate it. Tom in North Hollywood. Tom, we have less than a minute left. You got a quick one here?
All right, Tom. First off, we the people are the government. We must never forget that.
Amen.
Second, I wanted to talk about just nurture versus nature with women. Women had a chance to vote in the first woman president in our country and did not do so. And
they did by 3 million votes. It's just that they didn't pull off this loophole that we call the Electoral College.
But didn't the percentage of women vote for Trump over Hillary?
White women.
Correct.
Yeah, I think it was 53% of white women and 57% of, or maybe 63% of white men, something like that.
What I'm thinking is, I just want to say, in the chicken coop, the hens always protect the hell out of the other hens. And I want to know if this is more nature or nurture with women.
I don't know. My guess is, Tom, that's because they're in a coop. People behave differently, basically, and so do chickens, I'm guessing, when they're in jail. Thanks so much for being with us today. In other words, it's an unnatural situation. Thanks so much for being with us today. We'll be back tomorrow, same bat time, same bat channel. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires all of us, and that includes you. So please, get out there, get active, hook up with one of these great organizations or the Democratic Party itself and participate. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great afternoon. Tag your it, by the way. Have a great afternoon.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are HelloFresh, the #1 meal kit delivery service. More info at HelloFresh.com, code TOM. CB Distillery, CBD for sleep and pain relief. More info is available at cbdistillery.com, code TOM. Ground News, a well-rounded perspective for news readers. More info at ground.news/Tom. Angie, for any project on your to-do list. More info at Angie.com. Dinovite, a whole food supplement for your pet's immune system. More info at Dinovite.com. And ExpressVPN, the VPN that just works. More information at expressvpn.com/Tom.